Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hill,
Present.
Councilmember Leon,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Green here, Councilmember Thomas here. Councilmember Grant, present, and Mayor Labby and Councilmember Lewis are absent.
All right. We have the optional pledge of allegiance or moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, now we have approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
Yes, on, under action item 10E, it says 25-cent sales tax for pool, and it should be %.
Noted. Thank you for that touch. Ms. Simonson, you mentioned there was also something off of our agenda now.
Correct, the Economic Development Corporation update. We are moving that to the next meeting, given the length of the meeting, and that is something we can have at the next meeting.
Okay. Any other changes? All right. Housekeeping matters. Oh, yeah.
Lumanda moves to approve the amended agenda. This point of order,
Yes, sir.
don't we have to take the minutes off the consent agenda in order to amend that?
No,
We're going to the minutes, yeah.
when we get to
We're
the
at the
consent agenda,
agenda.
we'll do that.
This is in the regular agenda.
Just the regular.
Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong part. You're on this.
There's too many agendas.
Not paying attention, never mind.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, housekeeping matters. I'm sure all of you have noticed this is an extremely full meeting, and we are going to try to cover a lot and not go terribly late. So, to that end, I'm going to really keep people tight on the timing for public comments and for presentations. Please also keep your comments concise, unless you just really want to wax poetic during the discussions. I'd like to leave time for that. So are there any other essential housekeeping matters?
Yes, one.
Yes.
Congratulations to the county on the new purchase or moving into their new purchase. I would love to see a more collaborative approach to this, to see potentially what we could do to help each other out in terms of the landlord situation. Obviously, when you purchase a unit and there are people living in it, you now become a landlord, and we are in that situation currently trying to find someone to manage that for us. So maybe we could work collaboratively to save each other a buck or two if that's of interest.
Thank you. Other matters? Okay, moving on. Public comments about items not on the agenda. If there's anyone who would like to come forward and make a public comment, please tell us your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the room that wants to make a public comment? Is there anyone online that would like to make a public comment? Okay. Seeing none. Let's go to the consent agenda. Can you, sounds like you wanted to review the minutes from the consent agenda, no? Because, let's look over those quickly. These are the minutes from August 1st, but All right. If anyone has any, does not have any corrections to the minutes, you entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Grant moves to approve the consent agenda dated August 1st, 2023.
One minute seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving right into department reports. City administrators report.
Great, well, thank you, everyone. I just want to start off by saying I want to thank all the city employees for yet another successful event. We are in event season and wanted to say Boom Days went very, very well. It was a fantastic coordinated effort between the streets department, the police department, and also our administrative department regarding the temporary use permits. I think the only issue I was made aware of is someone lost a fanny pack, and by the end of the weekend, it had been turned in. So that's it, fanny pack, which was the only thing that happened over Boom Days. Everything else went absolutely flawlessly. We had the Leadville 100 bike race last weekend, which is a huge event. And I also want to thank the streets department and the police department because they are both operating very leanly and did coordinate with the county, and that was a fantastic weekend, very successful. I know it's a big stress on our community. I know parking is oftentimes an issue, but we had no significant events. There was one injury on power line, but other than that, the person is okay. And yet another successful event. The Trans Rockies race is tomorrow. That is a much smaller race. And of course, we have the Leadville 100 run coming up this weekend. So I just want to say the collaboration between the city and the county has been fantastic. Tamara Jenlick, the race director, did the welcome to the racers on Friday and acknowledged that she has never seen better cooperation between the city and the county. So I want to thank the county for that. Thank the police department especially, and the streets department especially, for their hard work in getting all the street closures and everything clean and labeled so that the events can run smoothly. Speaking of Boom Days, the parklet that is across the way at the visitor center was open for Boom Days. The community opening is, I believe, tentatively set for September 7th at 10 a.m. That would be the formal opening of that. So that was fantastic to have that for our visitors. I'm learning that the order carts out front are a very, very, very popular photo opportunity for folks coming into town. So it's a great hit all the way around. Speaking of people in town, our EV charging station, we have put in a request to have that repaired. One of our cables isn't working. It is going to be repaired hopefully soon. You can still use it, but I think the plug is broken for some types of vehicles. I'm not sure, but we have an order in to get that repaired. So if anyone has any concerns about that, that is in the works. We had an issue raised when the council members raised an ADA parking question in our last council meeting. I just wanted to let you know we've addressed that. I worked on that the next day. What we've done is we have put in requests for our civil engineers, RG and Associates, to give us analysis as to what we should be required to do and what it should look like and how it should be constructed. So before we go doing anything, we want to make sure it is what we need to be doing. We signed on to a grant for C4, which they are submitting in partnership with Energy Smart in Eagle County for funds as far as their energy assistance program. We signed on to that. We also have Christy Galarza of Lake County Build a Generation has offered to attend the Colorado Association of Ski Towns Housing Group on our behalf. This is an informal group that talks about, upcoming legislation or just general discussions about housing that affect rural resort towns. And so Christy's offered to attend that, and she has been approved by CAS to attend on the city's behalf, which is great because I haven't had the bandwidth to be able to do that. Just wanted to pass along some information. The county sent out an email. I can find it to make sure I don't misstate it. The U.S. Geological Survey is conducting a dye tracing study in Lake Fork Creek. So if you see the creek a slightly different color, that is fine, it's intentional. Dye injection at the creek may result in a light yellow to green color visible for approximately 12 to 24 hours after the dye injection. So basically, what is that? The creek is getting an angio. What is it when you do that? It's the angiogram, sure, yeah, something like that. So don't panic, it's on purpose. A couple other things I wanted to note. We've been working hard on cybersecurity. I wanted to let you know that our cybersecurity training is paying off. We are well below the average as far as people who have, I guess, fallen prey to phishing attempts in the city. You know, I keep bringing this up, but it's a big deal. Several cities have been hit with ransomware, and so we've been working hard on that. You all know that the mayor is in Allies, Ireland. That is why our wonderful Mayor Pro Tem is handling the meeting. He arrived successfully and is having a good trip. And I think that they are definitely showing him the local culture. That's all, and I will leave it at that. Just wanted to remind everybody that we have a couple work sessions coming up. And so we do have, let's see, our next work session is later this month. Have my dates right, August 29th. That's our joint work session with planning and zoning regarding the Title 17 code amendments for housing variety. And I think we were also potentially going to include, a discussion on land banking for the request of council member Luna Leal. We also have a work session coming up, a reminder on September 12th regarding short-term rental cap, and not to create work session fatigue. But I would like to schedule our work session for goal setting. It's time to start thinking about the budget process. As you remember, last year we did goal setting for all the departments and they presented their goals and then their budget later so that their budget was consistent with their goals. So would the council have availability for a work session on September 26th?
Regular time, 6 o'clock time.
Regular, yes, regular
Yes.
bat channel, regular bat time.
I'm available.
I may have a bill generation meeting, but if I could make it, I would really love.
Okay. Right, so generally we think we have a quorum. Okay, that would be great. So I know that's a lot of work session fatigue, but I do want to try and keep us on track. So September 26th.
Are the meetings, the other special meetings on the 29th and the 12th, are those also at 6 p.m.?
Yes, that's correct. And my last update is regarding our community center. Our closing date, just a reminder, is September 14th. I would like to have it at City Hall. And just so we can have a little festivity, I will confirm the time as soon as I'm able. But we are underway with an appraisal, which the purchase is contingent on the appraisal, but we are also underway with the survey. As you all remember, it's not contingent on the survey, but we wanted to make sure we knew what the property boundaries were. But everything is progressing just fine. We got the title commitment and did not see any issues with the title, so we did not object to title. So we are on our way. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the city administrator? Okay. Human resources, is there any?
She is not. We we don't have as much of a debrief. We don't have as much of an update at this time. We know the big projects are, we are meeting weekly to update our employee handbook. And we are very, very, very hopeful we will have our salary survey data available for the budget process.
Okay, questions on that brief on human resources? Okay. Sergeant Ortega, are you presenting for the police department tonight?
I am.
Great.
Can you come up? It's easier for us to hear and see everybody. We have everybody come up to either. Is the owl going to work from the lectern, do we think?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Project.
Okay, Blue Days was a success. Street closures were maintained pretty properly. We didn't have any issues with street closures. Chief Chavez, or Chief Chavez, participated in the parade, and no issue during the events. The streets opened up on time. For the Blue Days, LPD officers were on foot, majority of all of it. We would alternate out, we all wore our cowboy hats to boost the spirit of Blue Days. My group is gonna be small, so. The 100-mile bike race, again, thanks to the streets department, they are tremendously on street closures. We had a police escort, interim chief, did the police escort. He was kind of surprised that some of those bikers are actually pretty quick. Yeah, you couldn't get past in this patrol car. The street closures, traffic control, all went off the moon. No issues. So at the touch base also, there's for the bike race. We had a $6,000 bike stolen from the race event. It was reported the morning of the race. And thanks to our good investigative skills, that bike had been recovered. It was recovered on Sunday. And there was an arrest, and at the time that bike was recovered, there was also a $10,000 bike that was stolen from Safeway in the past 2 weeks. That bike was recovered also. And so it was the same person that ended up stealing both bikes. Totaling $16,000, so he's not going to be very happy with his stay or whatever facility he's going to stay at for a while. Team Limbo was pretty happy with our assistance from the police department for the Lebanon Marathon. They really appreciated the assistance we gave for helping people happy. That's all I have.
Sounds very successful. Thank you. Questions for Sergeant Mateo? Okay. Chief Daly.
Evening, everybody. A couple of good news, Station 2, we have our certificate of occupancy finally. All right. Unfortunately, there's something on the certificate of occupancy that's incorrect. It says that there's no sprinkler required, and no sprinkler system in the facility, but there is both. It is required, and there's one in the facility upstairs, so we just need to get that fixed. And we're working with the building department to get that done. The Type 1 Spartan is here. It is down at Station 2. We went out on the 7th, and we inspected it on the 8th, pumped it, drive it. I had some concerns about the electrical because it has been a project vehicle from 2019. That's why we ended up getting such a good deal on it and I'll get into the financials of that here in a second, but we got such a good deal on it because it was already on the floor built, and then we hired Brian Brown, the consultant, to take a look at it and see if it was going to be great for our community, and it was. So we decided to purchase it. I think you remember that process. So the wiring itself is taken out 3 times in that vehicle. So I wanted to make sure that we really paid attention to the inspection and running everything to its max while we were out there. And we obviously worked everything else. There's a few things that it still needs, so it'll take about a month or so to get it into service. And that's pretty typical for a Type 1 engine. So we ended up saving roughly $31,602 on the actual price. If you remember right, it was at $489,000. And the final price on that was $457,397.35. So if you were to spec one of those vehicles out today in today's market, if you were to go out one, we'd be waiting 2 years for the chassis itself, and it would probably be about $700,000 to purchase Type 1 engine. So heck of a deal all around. So I think it's gonna serve this community well, hopefully for the next 15 to 20 years. Another, we have, 3 residents currently living down at Station 2 currently right now because of the certificate of occupancy. Unfortunately, we lost the captain on our organization, Captain Borrego went to Eagle River. He was a lifelong resident here and he had been with the department for 12 years. So unfortunately, that's just something that happens when we can go over there and there's more pay, there's more, et cetera, plus his whole life moved kind of over in that the Western Slope area. So it was a very huge loss to us. And so we're going through a promotional process for our internal engineers to become our officers, our firefighters become our engineers, and then we'll hire at the firefighter level. And one last thing, because I know it's a long meeting, we just got back from a low line fire. With the Type 3 engine, that was our second deployment already with that piece of equipment. So everybody's home safe. We went out and got some great experience. They did a lot of structural protection. So that was great to do. That's something different. Normally what they do, we used to deploy in the Type 6. And you don't do a lot of structural protection on Type 6, we can do on the Type 3. So we were able to get that experience while we were out there. So if you don't have any questions for me, that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Chief Bailey? All right, fantastic. Mr. Medina. Great.
I can.
Yeah.
I'll make it quick. We've been very busy this last month. My crew has been very busy doing cleanings of drains and streets and really catching up on street sweeping. From this last rainstorm, we ended up having quite a bit of damage on the side of the roads. 7th Street was hit pretty hard. We did finally finish that. My guys Clint and Jesse and Mike, they all spent time up there and did the work. The rest of the guys have been busy doing other things. We started doing a roller mill on 11th Street today. Actually, it's 12th Street, orange and ash. We've got half of that done. Tyler is our grader and he was awesome in doing this stuff. So we got half of it done today. Clint and everybody else and Mike, Jesse and Chris, since Dan went and come back to us. In the firefight, we've actually been able to spend some time doing that work on that. All these things that we're accomplishing is that I couldn't do without my crew. And I just want everyone to know how well they're doing. And I appreciate them and I hope you do too. There's an open invitation from any one of you to come and visit us out there so we can show you the programs and the area. We have been using quite a bit of our brooms and sweepers, so there's going to be some requests coming up here soon for replacement. Some equipment is starting to show wear and tear of what we've been doing. So it's going to start getting a little bit stronger here, but it's necessary. We got winter time coming up pretty soon. We're starting to get our equipment ready for that. We're going to have some cutting edges and blades and stuff that are going to need to be replaced. We do have most of them that will probably be requesting more depending on the winter. Boom days and the events went very well. You guys were very knowledgeable. They were very helpful. They put in a lot of hours to do this. The 3 that I can say that we spent boom days together were Clint, Mike, and Jesse. And between the 4 of us, we did what we could, and looks like we did a decent job. I think everybody was happy with it. Even the guys were very, very happy. Yeah, that was that. Any questions?
I have a question. So I live on West 7th Street, and particularly after the last storm that affected East 7th so badly. I wondered if you had had any time to pay attention to or notice what I would call the gutters. It's the part that butts up to the sidewalk. They've been washed out and it's becoming a hazard in some areas along, I know, West 7th Street.
Yeah, Tyler has been out with the street sweeper and he's trying to get as many streets as he can. He's been putting quite a few hours into that, and it's just a matter of pattern and getting to, and plus we have the loader with the bigger brush. That on the thicker areas, we'll get them in there. So if it's not done already, it will hopefully be done soon.
It's not the street sweeping, it's that it's been washed away and then it's becoming a larger step to get from the street to the sidewalk.
Oh.
It's,
It needs-
it's washed out.
Needs to be filled in.
Yes, I know that you've got a lot to do.
What?
100 West 7th, 100 block West 7th Street.
Okay. I have to purchase something.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow morning, I'll take you.
Just make a lap through there, yes, thank you.
Okay. And any place else anybody can think of, just let us know. And we'll look at it, get through it as soon as we can. Let's schedule it in.
Thank you.
You look like you had a question? No?
Great job in cleaning, 9 day between the pre-cleaned and post-cleaned on these 7th, I live up there, so. It was pretty bad, but now it's as if nothing happened, when it's,
Well, when you have a knowledgeable street sweeper, he knows that machine.
yeah.
We can do wonders with that.
Okay, it was quick, too.
South Street was. Pretty bad.
It was pretty bad.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Alright. Okay, animal shelter.
I'm gonna do the animal shelter report. Caitlin is a little bit under the weather this evening. So a couple of things, in addition to the report that she submitted, I'm happy to try and answer any questions on that. But, she wanted me to let everyone know, that the animal shelter so far this year has already had 171 animals come through the doors. So that is fantastic, and I think I remember my data from last year's presentation about the state of the city, that I think they adopt at least an animal out every 2 or 3 days. So it has been very busy, and she wanted me to pass along to everyone that the animal shelter applied for and received a full ride scholarship for shelter cat behavior mentorship, which is about $580. And so there were a couple of our employees who requested more training on cat behavior. And so Caitlin applied for a grant and got it, and so their training will be paid for. So in addition, I'm happy to try and answer any questions just in general about the animal shelter.
Questions on the animal shelter? All right, thank
Oh,
you.
one last thing, I think we are working on getting some updated fencing for, I think we talked about that last couple of meetings. We are working on ordering and getting delivered some updated fencing for the yard in the back. So hopefully you'll get to see that sometime soon.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, licenses report.
So nothing too exciting, except that for our short-term rentals, I was able to finally finish making sure everybody had their qualified licenses. It's a little bit different number. It went from 11 to 13 additional. Because somebody called me this morning and said, wait, I need 2 more, and they're already a license owner. So I was able to pull 11 people off the wait list, and 4 people have already. And that's it, other than for, Joyce has applied for their renewal, and everything else is running as usual.
That is exactly what I want to hear. All right. Questions? Okay. Building department. We didn't get a building department report this time. Planning department.
I think there's one in there.
Did I just scroll right on it?
For these,
Oh, yeah.
and then permits.
Any concerns or observations about that? Anyone would like to pick? I guess I'm just missing the color graphs. On the. All right, planning department.
All right, good evening. I'm gonna start off with the rail yard tonight, but I want to talk about the rail yard. The SIA agreement that the council approved, that was fully executed and recorded. So that's good news. There's a drainage issue that I'm gonna talk about at the end of my report, so I'll wrap up that. I'll talk about everything else today, right? I've been kind of keeping the council updated on the rock crushing operations. The last update that I have on that is the CDPHE's air pollution control division. I finally got back to us and said that there's no issue, there's no non-compliance issue. So that kind of closes that issue out. Here, in terms of phase two, the developer has been installing infrastructure in phase two, so gas lines, water lines, sewer lines, stormwater lines. We do not have anything approved for phase two, so nothing has been executed or recorded. So that's everything from the PUD document to the civil plans to the SAA, the escrow account, all those things. Excel essentially issued a stop work order for all gas line installation in phase two. The developer came out on site and stopped work, and the city did the same. So the city is in writing has let the developer know that they cannot install any infrastructure in phase two without some sort of city approval, which is not in place. In terms of code amendments, we've been doing a lot with code amendments. They've all come across your desk. So as Lori just confirmed, did confirm with the planning and zoning commission that we'll meet on the 29th for that joint work session regarding the housing amendments. And then good news, the Historic Preservation Commission received another grant, $5,000 from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So I just want to applaud the HPC. This is a working commission. They're getting stuff done. They received a total of approximately $35,000 in grants just this year. So that's pretty outstanding for a volunteer mission. So applaud them for their efforts on that. All right, I'm going to wrap up my update with a discussion of the drainage issue. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to try to be brief and fly through this, but this is a bit technical, so bear with me. It is important to discuss this. I'm going to try to do this in 5 minutes, but maybe 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, so some of you may be aware, there is a manhole that is located on North Poplar Street, so just west of Highway 24. And that manhole is frequently overflowing, and it's affecting downstream properties, including this property right here, it's owned by Romer Properties and the tenants Flatiron Metalworks. This manhole is, I'm just kind of showing this map for context. It's right in the middle of an intersection of two pipes, one coming from the city and then one in the county jurisdiction. So it's just a photo of the manhole. This is what it looked like on August 1st with our record precipitation. So absolutely something needs to be done about this. So I'm not a civil engineer, but in terms of city staff, I was the best person for the job to jump in this and try to work with our consulting civil engineer to try to figure out kind of everything that's going on here. So I'm going to kind of walk the council through that tonight. This is an annexation map of the city's Leadville, sorry, the city's rail yard annexation. So just want to show for the purposes of documentation that so there's no confusion, that this manhole is actually located outside of city boundary. This is this dash line right here that hatches for the fourth part of that annexation, which annexed the area of Highway 24. Right. So this, I've just got a red circle here to keep everybody oriented. There's a bit of lag between my computer. That's Zoom space. Bear with me. All right. So this manhole right here is right in the intersection between a 24-inch storm sewer pipe that was existing at the time of the rail yard annexation, and then there's a 18-inch storm sewer pipe that runs north from that manhole in North Poplar Street right away in the county. And That pipe was installed, we believe, around 2008 with some work that CDOT did in the Highway 24 right away in 2008. And y'all know I've been here for a year, so I'm just gathering information, obviously, from stuff that happened before I got here, so bear with me on that. So the issue is that we don't have any drawings that show this, but this storm sewer in the North Poplar Street right of way, it's 18 inches. It's too small diameter. You know, you should have a larger pipe downstream. Your pipe should be kind of like a tributary system. Should go from small to big and not vice versa. It's also buried too shallow. It's under 4 feet in depth. So what that means is that in the wintertime, it also freezes because of the depth, and which creates some backup. So we do regularly see that manhole overflowing with precipitation events, with snow melt events, when we had in April, and then occasionally through the winter. All right, so I'm going to kind of start with the micro and then kind of zoom out to the macro. So kind of working upstream, if you will, from that manhole, as I mentioned, there's that 24-inch pipe in the under Highway 24. That drains essentially several inlets on Highway 24, the Mountain View Drive intersection that's just to the north, and the detention pond that is to the east of Highway 24 in the rail yards. So this is essentially what that is supposed to look like. That this is the proposed design plans. This this detention pond has a couple different features here that I'll get to, but what you see right here is an emergency spillway that is installed. And that emergency spillway, essentially what it does is when all the water drains through this pond and it reaches its design capacity. So then for your 100-year storm, then that emergency spillway then takes that water and puts it into that pipe system. But long story short, this detention basin, as it is designed, is supposed to manage all of the stormwater flow for up to the 100-year storm for fully built out rail yard phase 1 and 2. All right, I'm just gonna zoom into this a little bit more. So there's a couple of things that are not installed with this north detention basin. They're kind of contributing to this issue. The first, as you'll notice, this is kind of a large rectangular detention basin, and this is what's actually installed. This is the as-built drawing provided by High Country developers. So it's much smaller than it's supposed to be. Go back to that image. It's also lacking a couple of things. The most important is. Sorry, zoom out there. This is what is out there right now. There's this metal plate that's supposed to be installed inside that concrete outlet structure that I just showed. It's a small piece, but it's extremely important. It raises the overall capacity of that pond by 3 feet. So if you were to if you were to multiply 3 feet by the overall, I guess square footage of that pond, there's a significant amount of storage capacity that is not there right now.
Can it be installed now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, now I'll get to that. I'm sorry, a lot of these images are different sizes, so I'm having to pan around a lot. Bear with me on this. I'm just gonna leave it here for a second. So there's a couple other things within that detention pond basin that are not there. I believe the reason why that detention basin is not graded the way that it's supposed to be is was really twofold. One, there was an existing power line that was there, I think, when they did the excavation, that has since been removed. But one of those poles came down right in the middle of that basin. And so I think they graded all around. They were waiting on Excel to move that power line. So I don't know if that's totally not their fault, but it needs to be corrected. And then the other thing is that it's worth noting is the developer, as you'll see on this page, and I'll try to zoom in. Developer, these ponds that they have excavated right now are interim conditions. They have been approved by the city for underground detention chambers. so that they can have a future parking lot. And the council may recall that, so that's people from north and south detention basins. So the developer, it's maybe fair to say that they're, not wanting to excavate more than they have to, if this is gonna be the future plan, so let's just work on it. So as I mentioned, this detention basin is not detaining the amount of water that it was designed and approved to contain. All right, so I'm gonna start zooming out just a little bit, so just to kind of explain the overall drainage system, this is important for the conversation. So, that detention basin, basically, it's on the left-hand side of the screen here. It's at essentially the bottom, the lowest point of about 3/4 of this development. So everything you can see that's within red are these detention area boundaries for the rail yard. So this is really the north detention area right here. All of that drains everything from the east, which is in the county. And the red lines here on this plan show what was designed and approved, or basically the area that they were accommodating for in terms of drainage. And it didn't anticipate a flow coming from, sorry, this mouse is not working right here. Didn't anticipate flow coming from a culvert that goes underneath the rail yards. Underneath the railroad on the 12th, within the 12th Street right of way, and that essentially connects to what was previously the Star Ditch, which I'll talk about here in a second. So most of the subdivision is draining to that north detention basin, which is not holding amount of water it should. So one thing I should mention here is when the city approved these plans, we're reviewing these against our codified stormwater manual. And that manual says that this developer is not required to detain water for anything outside or upstream of this development or east of the county. All right, so flow that's coming on to the property that has to be transported, but it's not required to be detained on the property. The developer is only required for our stormwater manual to detain the amount of water that is increasing from the new development. In other words, they are not required to accommodate the pre-development drainage conditions. That makes sense. The other thing they're not required to do is detain water beyond the 100-year storm like we experienced. Right, we had a record rating of that. And so those are two important things. So there are some things the developer needs to do is what I'm getting at, and there are some things that the city can't require them to do. That detention basin that they have on the screen, a couple things I need to mention. It's designed to accommodate the first flush. So all the sediment, all the junk that's coming downstream in the storm sewer system, that's supposed to collect there and then percolate into the ground. So just re-emphasizing that emergency overflow that I mentioned, that is only for beyond the 100-year storm. All right, so zooming out just a little bit more in terms of context. I just kind of drew this up to hopefully help the council. So the Star Ditch, so just in terms of talking about what's coming from the east side, Star Ditch, as most of you know, is a historic drainage ditch that brought water, particularly for industrial purposes, into Leadville. I've got a Sanborn map from 1895 that shows that. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. From 1895, which you can see it's kind of a light blue color, it shows that drainage ditch coming to the intersection of North Hazel Street and East 13th Street. East 13th Street is not there, and North Hazel Street is now County Road 8. So what I have circled in red is, we'll talk about in a second, but that's essentially where the flooding issue began, where that drainage.
You did $20. Do I have you on there?
Oh, we probably need
Whoever is speaking probably needs to mute themselves.
Aaron Watkins.
Sarah.
Sarah, can you mute yourself, please?
I muted her.
So that historic drainage ditch, what we saw in April 12th, with that rapid snowmelt event, is that drainage ditch flooded out the county's road there. They had to install culvert to get that water going underneath the road, which is really just continuing the existing drainage pattern that existed there from Star Ditch. We'll go back to that map. So let me So I'm bringing all this up because that's really where this issue starts. What happened in April with the rapid snow melt event is, when that culvert was installed, some of that water, a considerable portion of that water drained east into the rail yard. And, you know, in a way that the rail yard civil engineer did not design for. And that did flood a home. And there's an insurance claim for a newly constructed brand new home, on Silver Ball Street there. Some of that water also continued, kind of just meandering its way in what was the old Star Ditch alignment down to East 12th Street and then continue down into the county system. So this map is basically just showing kind of where the water is going. So as you can see, most of the water that is entering from the east side, adjacent upstream of the rail yards, if you will, is draining to that north detention basin. So that should kind of give the council a pretty good idea of the scope of the situation. All right. So, as I mentioned, I've met with the city's civil engineers, trying to figure out, okay, what do we need to do? I've met with the county, and we're trying to figure out, obviously, this manhole that's flooding is in the county jurisdiction. It is draining what is basically immediately adjacent upstream, follow the pipes, everything for those where those inlets drain, that immediate area is city of Leadville boundary. So I met with the county, talked about this issue, and we want to do everything we can. We met the city's consulting civil engineer and asked for some direction and to really explain the land use law and drainage law, civil law that's kind of surrounds this issue from stormwater passing from county jurisdiction through a developed subdivision within the city and then back into a county system. Let's see here. So right now what we're doing is we're drafting a formal letter to the county to kind of, and that letter is also kind of for the purpose of documenting the situation because it hasn't really been done yet. So now we have a written record of what's going on here. So I'm gonna start wrapping up here, but I'm just gonna kind of summarize for the council what we're communicating both to the public and to the county. And we just intend to just send that letter tomorrow. But essentially, you know, going back to, you know, prior to the rail yard development, and it was annexed in 2017, there was a pre-existing issue where the manhole was flooded, and we have documentation of that. So we're trying to acknowledge that, okay, this was already happening. So there's another issue here, acknowledging that things need to be done in the rail yard. CDOT also has communicated in writing that that they're stating this is not their responsibility. So basically the city and the county need to figure this out. And they're referencing state statutes when they communicate that. RG Associates, our consulting engineer, has produced multiple reports since 2021, identifying the rail yards, stormwater sewer system deficiencies. And there were at least 2 reports that were provided to the developer this year. I met with the developer, I talked with him on the phone about this, and I've even gone further to specifically identify all of the individual things in the report and break those down, so it's very clear. For example, you have to have a metal orifice plate of 2 foot by 3 foot dimension, for example. So the developer has everything that they need to make these corrections, to be aware of what's wrong to make these corrections. So at this point, I have let the developer know, High Country developers, that these corrections need to be made immediately. I spoke with the High Country developers, asking me to speak with their civil engineer. I spoke with their civil engineer agrees with the analysis that I presented to the council tonight, and agrees that all of this work needs to get done. And that engineer, although they have some motivation to agree, that engineer does agree with our engineer's analysis of how, in terms of the law surrounding drainage patching from county to city back in town. All right, so wrapping up here, you know, what we're going to communicate, we plan to intend to communicate to the council is that it is absolutely the city's responsibility to address these rail yard drainage issues. That has the potential to contribute to the problem if it's not absolutely contributing to the problem. However, the city's responsibility for this issue does not extend to managing the pre-existing pre-development conditions from stormwater that is upslope and to the east of the railroads. And this is coming directly from the consulting engineer. And, you know, the development is transporting that flow back into the county, once it re-enters the county, that pre-existing pre-development flow is not the city's responsibility. See, the city, as I mentioned, the city is also not required, or the city's not requiring the developer to detain the water for above the 100-year storm. So in terms of enforcement with the rail yards, I spoke with rail yards developer, I spoke with their civil engineer. The city's plan with the support of council tonight would be to begin conducting enforcement. As of today, the rail yards is saying that they're trying to source this metal plate. They have an excavator issue, but they're going to get their excavator out and excavate the pond to its full size. But the support of council will issue a letter tomorrow to Icon developers, putting them on notice. Now, that letter will essentially say they have 2 weeks to begin the work that is required and 30 days to fully comply.
30 days as of the 2 weeks or
As of from tomorrow.
Okay.
I notice. See, one thing I did not mention is this subdivision has not been accepted into the city. So we have not began a warranty period. There's infrastructure that is not complete. So the per SIA the council just approved. We have not accepted any of this infrastructure. So in terms of enforcement, if the developer does not comply, and I certainly hope they do, if the developer does not comply, then what that enforcement would likely look like withholding COs. Hopefully we don't have to go there. We've got, you know, it's dry weather right now. I think the pond is dry. There's no reason not to get a lot of stuff down. So the intent of just presenting this to council tonight is to make sure we're on the same page as we kind of just make this information public and get this back to the county. You know, we appreciate the coordination and communication with the county, but really what the city's coordination for this looks like is addressing these issues upstream that within our jurisdiction that need to be addressed, and we'll seek that enforcement until they are addressed. We absolutely want to schedule a meeting with the county. We would, you know, right now we have, like I said, we have a civil engineer on staff. We consult the civil engineer, we pay them good money for their services. And they are the experts, and so I'm not sure what the history of the county is and their consulting engineer, but if one hasn't been consulted, that's what the city would recommend is trying to find some alternate design solutions for that manhole in the 18-inch storm sewer within the North Poplar Street right away. It's most likely that 18-inch pipe in the North Poplar Street right away was designed for the conditions that existed at that time, and that was a good long time for the railroads. I've got more the plan part of updates, but I'm gonna stop there.
Wow, thank you, Chapin, that was incredibly informative. Do you need, is the council's will to proceed with the letter as he described and the plan for holding the railroads to the fire?
I don't need a
Yes.
motion or anything yet, just let me know if you have any issues with anything I said.
Anything else people
Otherwise, I'll
add?
proceed.
I have a question about the culvert at the Star Ditch. Is that, and maybe you mentioned this, but I missed it. Is that county or city property out there?
This is the county boundary. On GIS, I just highlighted this, it's in Olson's the railroad property.
Mhm.
I just highlighted that boundary so it was more clear where the rail yard eastern boundary was.
Okay,
But this is the rail yard eastern boundary.
okay,
And then so that Star Ditch would be is within the county.
thank you. All
Thank
right,
you for being so detailed.
wow,
That was good.
super informative. It's gonna take weeks to digest all of that.
So-
I think I understand the path forward for enforcement against Pike, the developer. And that makes total sense to me. So what exactly is the path forward then for the other issues? In particular, the 18 and 24-inch pipe and Star Ditch? Is that the ongoing conversation with the county to see who's gonna do what and when?
Yeah, I think that's where we're at is we've gone to our expert to analyze the situation. And the expert has said that you have some things to do. within your jurisdiction, and so that's what needs to be done. But, you know, the next step with the county, be meeting with the county, having the county work with the civil engineer. And they're working to use the city's civil engineer, to design a solution. If the pipe's not big enough, either, you know, I'm not a civil engineer, but there needs to be a design solution for that. You know, designed by a civil engineer.
Well, thank you for starting all of that work. You know, my concern is that this kind of storm may not be so unusual. In the future. So it can be due to be proactive. To protect some of the properties, downstream of actually all of those areas.
I'd just like to thank Chapin for digging into this because this became an issue and I know that the tenant and the property owner. It seemed like, you know, everybody was trying to point fingers to figure out what it was. We just wanted to dig in and figure out. Obviously, you know, there's multiple reasons why this may be happening. It happened before the rail yards existed, but it doesn't mean that we don't have levers that we can pull to help address the situation. And so we are doing everything we can to pull those levers as far as what the developer needs to do to remedy this situation. So I wanted to make that.
In this case, our lever pulling would be us giving you direction to give them that notice. In that case, then I move to direct Chapin to give the notice stated in his presentation to High Country Road. Is that
I got developers.
High Country developers?
And it doesn't have to be a formal motion since it's just a
Alright.
department report, but I think if he's got enough. Of a consensus that that's the guidance from council, I think we can proceed.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Sales tax comparisons, financials and bills are,
Yes, so I want to pass out some good information. I just received the data, I think yesterday from Crystal at the county. And if you don't mind handing these down, so I did clarify a couple questions from the last sales tax data. We were having a question of what data are we getting from the county and what does it represent? So the smaller portrait size piece of paper is the full information about sales tax, which includes county. This spreadsheet is the spreadsheet we get to you every month, and that is the city's sales tax. So you can see for July, our sales tax is $339,710. That is well over our budgeted projected revenue for the month, which is $234,770. So as of now, this year, we are $366,000 over our projected revenue. I did clarify with Crystal that this is our July numbers. So basically, it is they receive July sales tax by usually the 9th of the following month. So this is actually, we know we were talking about it being, the numbers were actually numbers from a couple months before. If I asked for the question right, because it took me a little while to draft it, but this technically is July sales tax data that actually gets paid out to us by the 9th of the following month, us meaning Crystal County. So good numbers on our sales tax, and I did receive some information from the Colorado Association of Ski Towns regarding, you know, tax receipts. It's kind of all over the place. Some resorts towns are up and some resort towns are down. It may be event related. I do not know. I'm not enough as a statistician to dive into that, but we are, I'd say, amongst the half of the resort towns where sales tax is up as opposed to down.
thank you. I've missed these.
I did it myself.
I spent.
I typed that number into a spreadsheet. It didn't update it. It was fantastic. But no, thank you to Crystal for getting us this information. So it's always good to deliver good sales tax data.
All right.
And you know that, and we talked about this before, you know that the prior month was off so much because there was the random large amount that came in, so please.
Yeah.
Disregard the fact that that month was, looks like it was a lot lower than it should have been, it really wasn't, but those are good numbers for July.
Mystery money, ask no questions. Thank you. Okay, we don't have any bills to review someday.
We
I know
really hope that.
We paid a
we'll
lot of
have
bills
to
today.
review,
I signed the
yes.
check, so.
I don't know how to work the checkbook yet, so
We'll get there.
we'll get there.
We'll get there, it'll be. All right. That's it for department reports. On to presentations and discussions. We first have a discussion regarding a supplement. Should we do A and B together? Because they're kind of the same. Discussion regarding supplemental budget for the Lake County Regional Housing Authority. And discussion regarding adjustment to the city county intergovernmental agreement for housing director services.
And if this is helpful, this is a very, very small print, but I did print out the budget that we did attach to the original Regional Housing Authority IGA, so we can see that for reference.
Those of us with aging eyes. I'm not the right glasses. Nerd.
You really want to dig through it. You probably find it anyway.
I need a microphone. Okay. We're, because there is some information on the housing authority that's in here, was Jackie gonna give a presentation or talk about it, or?
Communication, I sent you the last minute, and I did want to talk to you about some things, but we're gonna start with the till next time. One was a housing update. And the other was, Michael A. from Capital Partners was gonna update you on land banking through Prop 123. As far as reaction on the supplemental budget, the request is $300,000. We ended up changing the scope of the budget to, well, many times, the latest iteration is for a 20 build for the school district property and the hospital property, to be 20 units built. And we included 10 of these in there, and so the increase is substantial. And I'm coming to you to ask, and I've got in the packet, the summary, which is kind of what I was gonna go over anyway. So we can read that when we try to sleep tonight. It's a little lengthy. But we're gonna be looking at a shortfall to the tune of about $378,304 towards the new estimate price. And then one of the others I want to give is that Bill did award a second grant for the county Wi-Fi doing the government house. And that property is under contract currently and scheduled to close on October 18th. I also applied for an administrative grant to update our needs assessment. It was granted that as a 50% match. And part of the request is to ask for additional funding for that match. So that's my update, and I'll come back again with the real one. But the hope is that you would be willing to contribute more funding. I'm getting very overwhelmed. This job is getting very, very big and very hard for me to keep up with everything. I'd like to look at adding additional staff so that we can manage some things. And then you mentioned I wanted to talk about management for immigrant schools. I think that's something that would be housed in the housing authority. We're doing our strategic planning. And it would be nice to consider that. But we're gonna need a bit more help in those.
So is it my understanding that for the supplemental budget to include $300,000 from the city. As well as $50,000 to match the separate grant.
You know, the total ask is for $300,000. And then it'll include, all the things that we have on the air right now. So, the additional match for the incentive grant, the match, to be split with the city and county, the needs assessment, and then additional funding for support.
So one of the things that we had talked about was how much we bring in through the accommodations tax, which was going to be our method of funding things for the housing authority.
And as of the numbers that I have, it looks like through second quarter taxes paid. So we have first quarter and second quarter numbers. It looks like the total accommodations tax paid as of my most recent number is $141,397.60. So we know that some of that money goes to, that's the total tax collected. We know that 1.9% goes to the tourism panel. And then we have the commitment for Jackie's salary so if you can read the itty bitty print on your report, I've memorized it. I had $70,000 per year for Jackie's salary, and then we estimated the leftover 2A money to be $70,000 for each year, 24 and 25. Likely, I didn't have time to run those numbers, but I'm hoping that we have additional leftover 2A money and that can be applied to part of the request. As of right now, I think we had given the regional housing authority to the county $50,000. And I think we did that sometime in February, I think. So we wanted to fund it and get things operating, so.
So we are on a shoestring budget right now. And the hope is that we will start to have our own funding mechanisms coming into play, but it's going to take time. We enjoy one of the things that we talked about is when we sell, we will utilize my real estate license, on a certain in terms of the 2% transfer fee. But and then we also have built in when the city and county created the housing authority, the ability to go to that for 1 mil or sales tax increase. So I'm not ready for that because we need to show that we have some success, that we have some units on the ground before we go and stand. So unfortunately, we are funded by the city of the county at this point. And so I ask right now for $200,000 so that we can have some operational funding to hire another person and then some of these requests that we're having.
Would that be a full-time person or a part-time person, Jackie?
Yeah, to be determined, I think we definitely have enough going on that we could just apply to one person.
So
Yeah, I'd like to see the request for a supplemental funding for 2023, so that we get higher and also the users funding. We're going to start with the incentive structure we originally awarded. We have to get under contract before we get the award letter. But as soon as we get under contract, we're going to start spending money. And it would be nice to have
So this large ask would go to salary and closing the shortfall regarding the infrastructure that drove the costs up significantly. Is that correct?
And did I understand right, the county, the split between the city and the county, so the county's paying what we're paying basically?
So the county has dedicated their remaining ARPA funds to between $772,000. So that helped with matching the supplemental for the second grant that they got in addition to the programming and
So,
And they're also going to use that money for the adjust programs.
so then of that 700, some of it's going to DHS, the rest of it's going to the Regional Housing Authority. I guess I'm having a hard time following along where of the $500,000 match. You're saying about 200,000 of that will be from the county? Or what's the match?
The match is only gonna be $100,000 on the supplemental, living record and supplemental grant.
Yeah.
So we received the second grant, totally separate from the first grant. To secure housing today,
Yeah,
and that was a $500,000, so I'm not asking you for anything.
that one's already, okay, that's where I was getting a little confused. So then the rest of it is just to fulfill the match that we intended to fulfill in the first place.
So, yeah, we changed the, planning laws, the two county sites, for environmental and planning plan, legacy history reasons. I don't know if everybody's aware of what happened. First, we tried to drop it off because it was not being listed on the Superfund site. That was the half block that we were hoping to develop. The other property was on East State Street, and there are some underlying money claims that folks think that they're on. And so that taints the title on that, so, even if the county were on that property, it's gonna take too long to clear that title to be eligible to build on for this one second. So we had to pivot to other properties. And we're still looking at the school district, half block, 16 lots, hoping to build 16 units on that, and then, I'm sorry, the school district, half block, and then the hospital, Tim's under, Tim Berkman, with the county managers and negotiation to transfer 7 lots to the housing authority, and we get them addressed. So we will be building 4 units there. There's 20 units being built in the first phase. In the second phase, we are hoping to look at the nursing ball field. We do a master plan of that property, including engineering, surveying, and planning, and we pursue the entitlement. And that's going to be a process. It's going to take time, a few years. So we're just looking for the master plan to be covered as part of it. We added in tax fees. So that we were having a better understanding of the infrastructure, cost was realistically going to be. So that's where the shortfall is. And that's the request is to help with staffing and the shortfall from the incentives for students.
So just to reiterate, because it's a lot, the shortfall was created by the change of properties and who owned those properties and what would be considered as a match, right? So the money that we're trying to raise is because there was a lack of property owned by us that we're donating on our behalf. Okay. I think I have wrapped it all up.
I guess. Well, we definitely have $70,000, sounds like, for the accommodation tax. I guess because I don't think anybody needs to convince us of the importance of this project. But I would like to do our due diligence and figure out, like I said, that's an enormous ask to just kind of surprise, and this is our, coming out of your budget that we did not have set aside for this. And I would like some time to sort out, like, can we accommodate that and where would it come from? Because not even our operating contingency is that large.
And that's fine. The way that this grant will be, the way it's operated is we spend money first and then we get reimbursed. We're still, at least I think, a few weeks away from having the contractor go, because we really want to be able to make sure that we've got these 2 sites. So I think that we have them. I've been trying to be in front of you to make sure that you know that this ask is done. There's going to be additional asks going forward. This, we're just looking at the horizontal infrastructure, bringing water and sewer to the properties to develop. And then there's going to be an ask from the bill for the vertical component of the bill. We will absolutely try to be as creative as we can with grants that are available. but I just wanna be in front of you and make sure that you know. We're gonna need money.
So Jack, I would just say, why don't you and I get together
Yeah.
and figure out some of this accommodations, do some. Pencil to figure out how much additional, hopefully accommodations tax money that we had. I did get your plan about where we accommodate this, so that was good. It was not lost on
even intentional. Any other comments, discussion, everyone just strong.
No, thank you, Jackie, for explaining.
Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Super.
it's complicated, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
to draw all this. The other thing is, we talked about, the county had noticed in the IGA created my position, that there was no room for a cost of living increase and a price increase. And so we wanted to make sure that, we adjusted that, going forward. So, that's the other request.
going forward for 2024.
Love to see in 2023, it's been a big year for me. And then we have also in there the IGA, for problem 2-3, identify on behalf of the city, and the county. For problem 2-3, that opens up some opportunities, we're going to have a ladies, speak on that, I think we're not going to be doing that. But there's a land banking opportunity in that, and there's also, there's just a lot of funding opportunities to work over the housing. And we wanted to have that conversation too, that there's a reschedule for the next, the deadline, I think he's proposing things to the county for the deadline of this Friday and Monday. So the turnaround time is very fast for that land bank and strong communities applications.
And I was just gonna say, just a point of, I am having a really hard time hearing people at the lectern with that fan going. Is there any objection to turning it off?
Can we just relocate it? Because I think it's pointing mostly at you.
Yeah, it's just, it's really hard to hear. Oh my gosh, thank you.
Oh, that is so much better. What a great idea.
You're,
Jackie, as always, we really appreciate the tremendous amount of work that you're doing on this. You know, this, it's still kind of a baby, you know, and it's just getting around. And I understand that there will be a lot more funds needed. I think, yeah, we just need to kind of go into this, our eyes wide open as far as cost of living funds. At all, but we need to.
yeah, I
put
just
that
added that.
into an IGA and stuff.
Great, I just added it, so we can obviously do it for 2024, I added it to the list of things to make sure we take into consideration.
Yeah.
And then the question is, if we would like to do something for 2023, we can figure out how to do that.
I think we could just calculate. Would we be in the same situation, you know, like when we get onto the mayor's salary where we have to list a number, or would it be could we match it to like whatever everybody else's cost of living is going up? This
So
will
the
get
answer
into
to
that.
those two questions in one, so, okay, it, because the mayor's salary is set by statute.
Yeah.
We'll get to that when we get to that presentation, that needs to be a fixed number, this is an IGA that we have with the county, so
Okay.
we could make it whatever we agree upon.
Yeah.
So, because it's not set by statute and can change, like the mayor's salary cannot change during the course of the term, so those are just different.
So would the cost of living allowance like for this year be dependent on modifying the IGA that currently exists?
I'd have to look at the IGA.
And the request is to modify, my request is to modify the IGA to allow for it. So.
Yeah, I can look it up real quick. I don't remember if it may have specifically, did it have a specific number?
Yeah, it's, you know, there's nothing in there about it at all.
And just here's yourself.
Well, if we don't have to modify an IGA, we don't, it makes it just easier. So we'll take a look at the IGA.
Okay.
And if it makes it easier, I don't think it should want it. So.
All right.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What's it? I don't flat iron. So, yeah, I appreciate you doing the due diligence on that. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming. I do love to see some stuff.
Thanks for
You guys have a
coming.
great night.
Okay, so back to my original question, is 9B separate from what we just talked about? That was, all right.
Don't jinx us.
So that's just the idea as it exists right now.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay.
So 9C has been,
Removed.
we will put that
So
on
just
the next agenda.
Go on to discussion 9D, discussion regarding 809 Spruce and its uses. Yes. You want to start?
I was gonna ask for that, I just wondered if we had made any headway with, finding someone to manage the property.
Well, so I, as you know, Amy Tate is our broker for the community center, and I have been asking her about that. She and I had a lunch date scheduled for last week to talk about just a couple questions that she had about the, I think, proposed contract that we had, put with the RFP. She's interested. She and I were both under the weather last Monday, so we have rescheduled. We're gonna reschedule our meeting, but she has definitely indicated that she's interested in doing that. And if that's the case, we would love that.
Right.
So, that is where we stand. I think, you know, in talking it through, we can make other ideas work. The reason that having a property management company is so helpful is that they have turnkey services that we really don't have, which is what we found. Credit checks are harder. We're not set up to do a credit check. We're set up to do background checks, but not credit checks. And also having someone show the property. So in the last month, I've had probably 3 or 4 people approach who are interested in it, and that takes up a lot of time. You know, when can it be available? Here's the dates we're interested in. What's the price? Can we come look at it? You know, and then one person just dropped out after, you know, we did a bunch of information. They went and looked at the property. They decided to move out of the area. So we do that over and over. And that having someone be able to do that turnkey service where they can say, here, you could look at the room that's available, and we run the credit check, we run the background check, we do all the paperwork. We can, you know, if Amy doesn't work out, we have some ideas about potentially how to do it ourselves. It's just a little clunkier.
So I guess my question is, why are we running credit checks for renters? I know it's standard practice in the landlord practice, but it's also standardly known through any advocate for housing that credit has really nothing to do with your ability to rent. It's mostly your income, not necessarily your credit score, and barring someone from a mistake they have made or really unfortunate circumstance they may have been put in, because our credit system is a bit broken. It seems a bit unfair to me, so I'm just kind of curious as to.
I think it's in part, it's a little bit of due diligence. It is part of the application process and the template that we've gotten from other communities and that we ran by our city attorney. I'm gonna tell you, it's not gonna be a make or break, and we've definitely worked with, like, for example, you know, the mining museum was looking at potentially an intern who may not even have an income that would be the same for someone who has a full-time job. So we're not gonna use it as a make or break, but I think it's a piece of information that we need to do.
I
Thank you.
personally fully disagree, but it is okay.
I appreciate, I just don't want it to fall off the radar because I think we're missing some opportunities because there isn't someone who's able to manage that. And I don't know that we need to rediscuss it until maybe after your conversation, and if the property manager comes on board, just to have a discussion around what that could look like.
Yeah, I think that, I'm probably one of the biggest proponents in the room of getting a property management company because I'm not a very good property manager. It's just, and I think what I try, we get a lot of inquiries and some of the inquiries, so for example, one of the inquiries did not meet the criteria. The person was not actually employed anywhere in our community and was looking more for a shelter type of situation. So we can connect people with those appropriate resources, but yeah, I think what I found is I've spent a lot of time recently with giving people information and trying to get them to use the room, and then we find out like maybe they moved out of the area, or after spending a bunch of time, they're not gonna be able to utilize it. And so, yes, it'd be great if we had somebody who that was their.
And we don't have to put it back on a next agenda item, if you could just include an update maybe in your.
Yeah, I'll keep
report for the
updating
next
him as
time.
city manager. Yes, Amy and I had lunch planned to discuss it, and
Thank you.
yes, I had an unfortunate bike crash, so, and she was under the weather, so we both took pass that day. So,
Could the Regional Housing Authority take on that role?
Well,
there are definitely communities where the Regional Housing Authority takes on that role. I would tell you, based upon what I heard with Jackie and her bandwidth right now, probably not.
If we end up supporting the hiring
Correct.
of a second person. But I think, and that's what you were bringing up, is like if they need a property manager for the apartments that they're purchasing, then
yeah, so. I mean, eventually, it would make sense for this to live under the Regional Housing Authority, long-term thinking, of course, as well as any other properties that we may come across that might make sense for employee housing. But at the time, we're kind of constructing it, so it's not ready for programs like that yet. I imagine it's probably gonna take some time for that. Additionally, I think with the county having their units, it would be interesting, kind of like we can bring that up with your meeting with Amy. To see if there would be a potential interest in that, just obviously it doesn't have to be contingent to that. Amy says no, then.
Right.
We should totally go away from that, but it'd be interesting to do that in partnership with them. I'm gonna meet with Kayla next week to talk more specifics on it.
Yeah.
To see if that could be something that the county's interested in anyway, so. By all means, I would love for you to ask the question.
Okay.
And if it's a deal breaker, then fully back off of it, but.
Okay, I will. Yeah,
okay. Thank you.
of course.
Any other comments or input on this issue?
Oh, but I just appreciate the word getting out. Like I said, the mining museum's an inquiry. We got an inquiry from the county that didn't pan out, but I've got another inquiry from someone from the school district that I responded to today. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I had sort of fancied that we would take a break because I thought we would be much later than we currently are. I'm gonna propose that we, unless anyone needs a particular break, that we just plow ahead. Okay. Action items. Next on the agenda, we have resolution number 17. Which is a coordinated election intergovernmental agreement.
great. So I'll keep this brief. We've done this in the past. Most recent was in 2021. We are signing the proposal is to have an intergovernmental agreement with the county through the county clerk for the county clerk to administer our election. And it also formally designates our deputy city clerk as our election official and sets some deadlines and parameters about that relationship. So our city attorney has reviewed the document. County attorney has had a chance to review it. I will just give you a heads up that there were some changes that the county clerk has not had an opportunity to review, and she is out, but we have in our resolution, or that you will see, a provision that we can, make some changes that are non-substantial after the fact, if there's anything that Tracy Lurson objects to. So we would like to get this signed this evening. Pass this resolution passed this evening because August 29th is the last day for us to enter into an intergovernmental agreement. And so we do not have another meeting before August 29th. So we would request that we do what is necessary to pass it tonight, so we do not have to have a special meeting.
So
With that, I have to answer any questions.
I'm just looking at the proposed motion and I don't see the flexibility in the wording.
It says, hold on a
If
second,
Tracy
I think
decides that something needs to
I think
change.
it's in the resolution itself.
Okay.
I apologize, I drafted both of these late, that is why your packet came out late. So there should be something in there that says you are passing this and you know, the mayor can sign it in substantially the same format as you're seeing tonight, meaning that if there's a small date change, or if there's a word or something here or there that the county clerk objects to, we can make those changes without bringing it back to you.
Hence, so substantially,
It says, well, it's section 1,
yes.
that's section 1. Jersey, IGA, from the city of Leadville, Lake County government. The conduct, administration, coordinating election, and substantially the same form as attached as exhibit 1.
Yep. Yep, exactly right. So if there's, and that gives us leeway if there's a small word change or paragraph or something here or there that doesn't alter the substance of the document, we can go ahead and make those changes without bringing it back to you. But with that, we should be, if there's any other questions, I think it's pretty straightforward, very similar to the one we entered into in 2021.
Other questions or comments? And I would entertain a motion.
Well, to approve resolution number 17, 2023. Resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement by and between the city of Leadville and Lake County government for the conduct and administration of the 2023 coordinated election to be held November 7th, 2023.
Thomas seconds.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Luna Leon,
Yes.
Councilmember Grant,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Green,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill,
Yes.
and Councilmember Littleton and the Mayor are absent.
Fantastic. Okay, moving forward, we have another resolution, number 18. Proposition 123 intergovernmental agreement.
Great, so this is the resolution that we would enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the county so that we could receive Proposition 123 funds. So just a little additional background on this. Jackie left, but Jackie has opted into the program on behalf of the city. We made a motion a while back indicating that was the council's intent and took Jackie up on her kind offer to do that. So she has opted in, and you can see that in the, I think it's in the whereas, the reason we're doing this intergovernmental agreement, and I was grateful that our city attorney caught this, is the point of this agreement is to say that we are agreeing to share in the calculation of the housing. So you know, right now you opt in with your baseline, and the city, the county has helped us calculate that. You opt into the program, you need to file that with the Department of Legislative Affairs, and then you commit to creating housing above and beyond that at a certain percentage. The purpose of this agreement is to basically agree that the city and the county will use our coordinated numbers towards that goal. And so that's the gist of it. We are opting into the program. Jackie has opted in. This intergovernmental agreement will help us achieve the goals and hopefully receive some of those funds. And we've had legal review of this, and I appreciate our city attorney's experience with this, with other cities and knowledge in this. Again, this is new legislation. So all the cities and counties and jurisdictions are trying to figure out the best way to do this, but we're going to combine with the county.
It's worth noting that the consequence of not achieving the goals set by opting into Prop 123, which is building an X amount of units, and with this IGA kind of plays out exactly what that number is. With the city and county in mind, we would be barred from entry. As a consequence, there is no consequence of having to pay back anything, it is simply just of not allowing us to reapply for that next cycle, for that following cycle. It's a 3-year cycle, from my understanding. We have 3 years after opting in to complete the goal statement.
Just
And
construction.
how long are we put in timeout if we don't get it?
Just one application cycle, so 1 year. So we wouldn't be able to opt in for 1 year.
A side question, just given our limited building season,
Yeah.
do the things have to be completed in construction, or you just?
I believe they have to be completed, but that's a question for.
Yeah.
Both. I imagine they might be lenient. I don't know, it's.
Not that that wouldn't interfere with this, just occurred to me that it could be problematic.
So this essentially is just making it easier for us to achieve.
Yeah,
Exactly.
especially for the county on their end, since most units would fall in city limits, most likely, as our current projects working in city limits. It would help out the county be able to qualify for that, which is obviously something we're interested in, because that means more funding in general for us. So this IGA helps both of us at the end of the day.
Sure seems like we need more funding.
Yeah.
In that field. Any other questions, discussion? All right, would someone like to make a motion?
Luna Lab moves to approve resolution number 18, series of 2023, a resolution authorizing the filling of an affordable housing.
Filing.
commitment. Huh?
Filing.
Filing, oh, sorry, filing of the affordable housing commitment with the Colorado Department of Local Affairs pursuant to Proposition 123 and state law, and approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Board of County Commissioners of Lake County related to affordable housing commitments.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Green,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Grant,
Yes.
Councilmember Luna Leal,
Yes.
Councilmember Hill,
Yeah.
and Councilmember Littleton and Mayor Arras.
Fantastic. Small steps. Hopefully we'll have good returns. Okay, now. Holy cow, we have ordinance number 4. Yet again, finally tying it up for the compensation of the mayor.
Great, thank you. I wanted to just highlight one thing on this. So this is second reading for this ordinance, and the only thing I wanted to highlight for you is that we now have the salary set at $40,000. And the council requested that the ordinance include a cost of living increase. And what we, in discussion with our city attorney, well, that is possible. What our city attorney advises is that actually be a set percentage rather than just, because I think we had talked about it being a cost of living increase consistent with what other city employees would receive.
Yeah.
Well, but that's, I think, they felt like that was potentially, not setting it at a fixed number for the term of the mayor, the mayor's term. So their recommendation was that it be set at a set percentage. And so we said, what about 3%? I wanted to highlight that in the staff report. If you all as a council do not believe that 3% is the correct number for that cost of living increase, of course, you are entitled to change that tonight. We would like to obviously have this number set so that those people who are pulling packets, if they are, because the opportunity is, open now for candidates to pull papers, that they would know what the salary would be. So that's the only thing I wanted to highlight that was different in coming back to you all. And I think the other thing is we eliminated the cap on the mayor's salary should the city transition to a professional city manager. So we eliminated that language. Those were our recollections of the changes on second reading. If anyone else has a different recollection, we can make those changes now.
I have actually a question. Since this is an ordinance second reading, does this need to be a public hearing?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yes.
Hannah, I know you didn't want me to make stuff up, but I'm gonna make stuff up. All right. Thank you for the background, but
Yes.
let's proceed with the public hearing on
Yes.
this. All right. I'm gonna open the hearing at 7:43. Good evening. My name is Dana Green, and I'm the mayor pro tem of the city of Leadville. This is a public hearing before the city council to consider an ordinance amending section 240.030 of the Leadville Municipal Code concerning the compensation of the mayor. When the public hearing is opened, I will first attend to some. I'm not going to attend to housekeeping matters. This should be straightforward. I will ask if the staff to add any additional highlights to their staff report. And then I will ask for testimony of any individuals in the audience who wish to speak in favor of the application, and then those individuals who wish to speak against the application. Don't really have an applicant here, so I'm skipping all of this. Following that, I will close the public input portion of the public hearing and allow city council an opportunity to ask questions and discuss this ordinance. At the conclusion of our discussion, the council will render a decision, which could include a continuation of the hearing. I'm not gonna read the public hearing thing because we don't have. We don't have, yeah, we don't have an applicant that we have to,
Correct. I think you can just
I'm just
open
gonna
the
skip
public
that stuff
input
then.
portion of the public hearing and see if there's anyone who has public testimony.
okay. Any questions about this public hearing procedure? Then I'm gonna open it, okay, now at 7:45. For the ordinance concerning the compensation of the mayor. Well, we heard a little bit of the background, so let's ask for open the public input portion of the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak in favor of our ordinance regarding the compensation for the mayor? Online? Do I have anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the ordinance regarding the compensation of the mayor? Okay, and I would entertain someone to close the public input portion.
Luna moves to close the public input portion of this public hearing.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, we just had a really great background on this. Do you have any other additional highlights you'd like to share with us?
I do not.
Okay. Regarding a discussion. Any feelings about the somewhat arbitrary cost of living increase?
So
Since
was
we have to
it
pick a number?
completely arbitrary? Did we look at general, like? increases that we've done previously?
Yeah, well, and it's definitely based upon the research that I did last
Okay.
time when I came and brought to you the cost of living increases for the staff. I mean, the projections at the time were 9%, 12% cost of living increases. And I think those have been backed off to more like 6%. I think 3% is conservative. I think, you know, should the council, I mean, I would give you my opinion is I don't think it should be less than that. But if the council decided that it could be more than that, that's your decision.
Well, given our situation and how much things are still increasing despite inflation being down. I would feel like being more towards that 6% number, not 9%, but 6% number. I totally feel comfortable for that, but I'm not gonna die on that hill. The rest of the council is not in favor of that.
And the only thing I would say is it is for the term, the mayor's term. So it is not a 1-year cost of living increase. You would be looking at, you know, 3% annually for the term of the mayor. So
I feel comfortable at 3%.
I would have to say that I do too.
I'm good with that 3%, that would make him maybe almost 45,000 at the end of his term. Or whoever it is, sorry. So, I'm good with 3%.
I think particularly given, and I think we will need to address this also, is changing the code that has the duties of the mayor described. Because currently it isn't quite up to date with our new expectations since you were made. Okay. Well, Christian, since you're not gonna die on that hill, seems that most of us are okay with the 3%. All right. Any other discussion? And I would entertain a motion.
Grant moves to approve ordinance number 4, series of 2023, and ordinance amending section 2.4013, no, I'm sorry, 030
Yes.
of the Leadville Municipal Code concerning the compensation of the mayor.
Thomas seconds. All right, roll call please.
Okay, Councilmember Hill,
Yeah.
Councilmember Leonard,
Yes.
Councilmember Grant,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Green,
Yes.
Mayor Labby, and Councilmember Woods.
All right, moving ahead with our new model for city governance. Now we actually do have a certificate of appropriateness for the Ross Ricketts residents, which I actually have a script for, so it won't be quite so janky. Good evening, I'm still Dana Green, and I'm still the Mayor Pro Tem of the city of Leadville. This is a public hearing before the city council to consider a certificate of appropriateness for residential infill in the National Landmark District. Tonight, we will consider a certificate of appropriateness hearing for the Ross Ricketts residents at 304 West 4th Street for residential infill. When
What's that?
is it West 7?
Yeah.
Yes.
It says, sorry. West 7, 304 West 7. When the public hearing is opened, I will first attend to some preliminary housekeeping matters. I will then ask for staff to discuss highlights of the staff report, followed by the applicant to make a brief presentation of his or her case, and then testimony of any individuals in the audience who wish to speak in favor of the application, and then those individuals who wish to speak against the application. The applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal, which is the applicant's opportunity to respond to any comments made by members of the public. After rebuttal, I will close the public input portion of the public hearing and allow city council an opportunity to ask questions. Once the public input portion of the hearing is closed, we will not accept any additional testimony unless it is in response to questions posed by the commission with the applicant. At the conclusion of our questioning, the council will render a decision, which could include a continuation of the hearing. This public hearing is quasi judicial, which means that we have to follow certain procedural requirements to establish a record. For this reason, it is important that when you speak, you identify yourself. If you would like to submit written materials, please understand that the city will have to hold on to these materials for at least 30 days after the city council renders its decision. Because this is quasi judicial, I will ask council if anyone has had ex parte interactions with the applicant. I will now open the public hearing for the Rock Crickets residents at 304 West 7th for residential infill. And it is 7:52. Okay, we have the applicant's presentation, please.
If it's all right with council, staff will give a presentation first, and then the applicant can just touch on anything, any background information or design intent information that any covered. So good evening, for the record, I'm planning director Jake Lachance. This is an application for approximately 3,700 square foot, 3-story new single family home within the historic district. This is classified as residential infill under our code because it is on a vacant lot. The council approved a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the previously existing home, and that demolition occurred in 2022. So this is application for a new home on a vacant lot. The Historic Preservation Commission did hold a public hearing last week, and you have the recommendation in the packet. I'll just briefly go through the highlights of the staff report. This was fully vetted at HPC, so I'll just give the council the highlights. That's all right. So there are. See, this was the previously existing home, and then this is the proposed home. The applicants provided a rendering. As you can see that this area of West 7th Street has a lot of slope to it. So the lot has approximately 30 feet of grade drop between the alley, the back to the north, and West 7th Street. So the applicant definitely has to work around those slope constraints with their design. All right. So the code has some criteria, and then the code also references design standards. So the staff report that was in your packet that was provided to HPC provides an evaluation of both of those. In terms of code criteria, the main one is that this design should be a product of its own time, is what the code says. Just to paraphrase that. So what that really means is that it should not look like exactly like another historic structure that we have. And should also not be something super modern, it has to be compatible. So what staff and the Historic Preservation Commission are finding is that this house, I'll use the example of the front gable that kind of blends back into the higher hip roof in the back. That's a combination that is unique in terms of this proposed design. You find both of those roof styles throughout the historic district, but not a lot of historic structures that blend features like that in terms of roof forms. And so I'm just using that as an example. There are some other things that are worth noting. But the staff and the HPC found it was a product of its own time. So that's the main code criteria. And then the design standards, as I mentioned, are also included in your staff report. The main design standards that were reviewed, evaluated, and discussed at HPC were regarding height and the buildings, the designs really stepping down both towards the street and towards the rear alley. So it was discussed that if the primary roof form had extended all the way to the front and all the way to the back, this building would appear much larger from the street. The height is technically within both the zoning code standards and within the historic design standards in terms of the number of stories. However, we find the applicant has done a good job of basically taking those roof forms and making them step down as they approach the street. So the structure does appear as a smaller structure, although it is for the historic district, it is a decent size. And then it's meeting the programming needs of the applicant. In terms of modules, the the code does, I'm sorry, the standards do encourage buildings to be broken down into separate modules. If you look at our historic development patterns, you typically had a small, call it 700 or 800 square foot home that was then probably added on to over time, maybe in the 20s or 30s or 40s, and then maybe there was another addition in the 80s. And so you have a series of additions. And so what that looks like, that, you know, from the street, that can be perceived as a series of additions, or it could be one big long structure. So the idea is that the design standards encourage modules, so it encourages that separation of basically the breaking down of the building size and scale into smaller series. So that was a question, trying to poke holes at this. I asked the Historic Preservation Commission, does the commission have any concerns with the number of modules? The commission did find that, as you look at this image, that the primary, the facade that has a gabled roof, that is in fact a module, and it is breaking down that front facade. So as this would be perceived from the street, where the public would be perceiving this, this building does appear smaller in form than it would otherwise. Just in terms, I think the last thing that's worth mentioning was that in terms of ornamentation and detail, the standards say that, you know, Leadville is a collection of simple structures, and we have some Victorian homes that have, you know, more detail and more ornamentation to them. But in general, the character of our historic built environment is not highly ornamented. And so this structure, both staff and the HPC are finding that there is some ornamentation that you can see with the detailed bracketry in the gables, the fish scale siding, et cetera. But it is not highly ornamented there, therefore it's appropriately ornamented and it's compatible. One more thing I should mention just regarding materials. We did have a discussion regarding materials. There are conditions of approval that are included in your packet that are recommended regarding some materials being specified, and also the colors being slightly adjusted to match the our 2016 historic color guide, and the applicants communicated they don't have any concerns with that. They actually provided to the HPC some alternate colors and material specifications. So, but the HPC and staff were comfortable with the materials that were proposed. We just need some further specifications, and those are all included as conditions of approval. So wrapping up, both staff and the HPC found that this project was substantially in compliance with both the code criteria and the adopted design standards. So the recommendation from the HPC is that the council adopt this application with the attached findings and conditions of approval. I will note that this was the first residential infill COA public hearing that I worked through with the HPC. This applicant was great to work with. They voluntarily came for a work session and proposed a design, and both staff and the HPC were able to give feedback. So they've gone through a few iterations of designs to accommodate staff's comments and the HPC's comments. So what that resulted in was I think a just really efficient and effective process to get to the public hearing. The public hearing went very smoothly. There were members of the public that did provide comment, but we didn't have any comments of opposition. We had questions regarding setbacks and snow storage and those sort of things. Some of these things being addressed by zoning code criteria. So in summary, it's a very smooth public hearing, and I'm just really proud of the HPC, how they evaluated this. I did ask for feedback, since it was the HPC's first time with me working through kind of like this process. And the HPC said that it was good. This is how we should do things. They like the staff report, and they said that I think some of the staff report was vetting some things that maybe some of the members of the public came to in opposition to comment on. Those concerns were addressed. So I was glad to hear that. So just wanted, as we're kind of going into maybe a little bit of a new era here with historic preservation and those sorts of things. We may see more of these come up. Just want to provide a little bit of that background. But that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
When I first started reading, I was concerned about a 3-story structure sitting atop that hill. So I appreciated the level of detail that was included in this report about the bottom floor actually from the back being underground in the drawing. That was very, very helpful. So thank you for putting effort into making that understandable.
Right. Yeah, I think the applicant's doing a good job of trying to meet their programming needs for the home,
but also respecting the historic design standards and kind of hiding some of those things and still giving them that full area that, doesn't affect the appearance from the street as much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, would the applicant like to make a presentation?
My name is Kathy Ross. My legal name is Jacqueline Ross. My husband and I own 304 West 7th. And my mom and stepdad, who are here, also will be residing with us in the future home. I'm gonna try to keep this pretty brief. So because I know I've been here for a while, and just comment again that working with Chapin and the HPC has been really positive and a really good experience overall. We worked over the last year and a half on the home design, and just to meet the requirements of the residential infill guidelines. And this is our third complete home design. So this is third time for charm, I hope. We did do a complete redesign after we spoke to Chapin after we presented a design to the HPC last year that didn't get voted on because it was not the right time for it. But it was a good thing it didn't get voted on because it wasn't as good a design. It didn't step back from the street. It was really tall and it would have just felt like a tower on 7th Street, and I don't think anyone would have liked that, including me. So the main elements we wanted to address with this particular design is we wanted it to basically slot right in with the bungalows on either side of our lot, while not looking like an exact copy. So as your eye scans along the ridge, we didn't want our home to like stand out as either a giant tower or a new build monstrosity. We wanted the street view to provide the appearance of the multiple additions over the years, like most older lead-built homes have. We think that's part of the charm. So stepping back the way we did with the hip roof off of the gable peak, we think it makes it look like the house behind is an addition, which was kind of the goal. We designed it so the basement is hidden from the street view, just like the old cellar on the old structure. That was another important thing to me, was to keep that feeling of it being like a 1.5-story house, even though it's not. I wanted to trick the eye through design elements. We did a simple exterior design with some contemporary elements. I think the contemporary elements, I know Chapin already said, the combination of hip and gable roof lines. And I think the combination of the brick, and it's not going to be cultured stone like it looks like there. It's actually a moss rock veneer, so it's real stone. But I think that combination is more contemporary. And also the circle window, the accent window in the peak of the front facade, is a little larger than you would have seen in an older historic home. So I think that just gives it more of a contemporary feel. And again, I know Chapin mentioned this, but we did design it so it steps down on both the front facade and the rear, so that it gives an appearance from the street of receding and being only 1.5 stories. And I would just want to comment that we plan to use as many recycled materials from the previous structure and the lot as possible. We took out doors, cabinets. We really want to use the bricks from the lot, but someone on the HPC told us that we might not be able to use them on the exterior like we hoped, but we will use them on the interior if we can. Because there are old brick walls. We don't know what that structure was, but they're on the lot. And our colors, we did change them to being chosen from the historic color palette. They're basically almost exactly the same. The red's a little different, but the red doesn't even show up on this rendering. So, but the colors are almost the same, and they are from the historic palettes. And in closing, I'd still like to say we worked incredibly hard to build a house that will fit, you know, both of our families, plus not look as big as it is and not look good. And we moved a lot underground just to serve the purpose of fitting in with the surroundings. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for me before I sit down? Or?
I think we'll do that when we do our questions.
Alright.
But at this time, I'd like to open the public input portion of the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience, in person, who would like to speak in favor of this application? Yes. Steve.
Names, let's see, it's the 11 there. Steve Prestash, live at 131 East Third Street. It's astounding the amount of preparation and review that this project has taken. Wish him the best of luck.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in person who would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone online who would like to speak in favor of this application? Okay, is there anyone in the room who would like to speak in opposition of this application? Seeing none, is there anyone online who would like to speak in opposition of this application? All right, I don't think there's any rebuttal to be made. So I will entertain a motion to close the public input portion of the public.
Grant second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Okay. All were in favor, okay. Now, questions, comments from council to the applicant or any discussion?
I made my comments already.
Okay.
I probably did that outline, sorry.
No, it's,
Appreciate that.
yeah, I really appreciate the amount of work and detail that you've put into this. And it completely does not matter for this room, but I really like it. Okay. Comments, questions? What Heather say? All right, then, I would, entertain a motion.
Thomas moves to approve the Ross Ricketts single family dwelling infill residential PL 2023 008. Located at 304 West 7th Street, along with the attached findings and conditions.
Grant second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Phil.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Green,
Yes.
Councilmember Minaleo,
yes.
Councilmember Grant,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
and Mayor Levy and Councilmember Lawrence.
All right. Congratulations. Good luck. Okay, next on our agenda, we have a potential ballot referral regarding a 0.25% sales tax for a pool.
Hi, thanks for putting PB Swims on the agenda. I'm Jane Harrelson, part of PB Swims. I did email our ballot question to this morning. One thing missing from it was that revenue would go toward renovation, operation, maintenance, and eventual replacement. I didn't have that renovation in there. I do have it in there now. One of the reasons I put it in there is, last night I was at the school board meeting and they were talking about, a month ago, they were talking about putting a bond issue on the ballot to renovate Lake County Intermediate School and also the pool, the aquatic center. Last night, they didn't make a decision. They probably will at the August 28th meeting, whether or not, but last night, it didn't really sound like it sounded like they have just too much going with education that I don't think they're gonna put the pool on the ballot, and they may, but I don't think so. And so if they don't, if you all agree to put this on the ballot and let the taxpayers decide if they want to raise sales tax 0.25%. So it would be 25 pennies on a $100 purchase in the city of Leadville. That revenue would go directly to help renovate, operate, maintain, and eventually replace the Lake County Aquatic Center. If the voters approve that. So I think I told you about 2 weeks ago at the last meeting that the school district ran the swimming pool from 1975 to about 1993. And then a nonprofit took it over because the school district just did not have the money to operate and maintain it. And then in 1999, the pool was in such need of repair. The Lake County Parks and Recreation Department, it was a 501c3, they had to drop it. They just didn't have the money to fix it or operate it. So then in 1999, it was the fall, the taxpayers got together and raised the money to renovate the aquatic center. It was an $800,000 renovation. And in 2004, November, it reopened and the county operated it for 15 years and it was loved to death. And so when it was closed December 12th of 2020 and the county looked to see if they could find the leak, there was water between the liner and the shell. And by April of 2021, the county decided to permanently close it. And so we've had a master plan since. We've had a survey by SE Group that did not include our existing swimming pool, but in those results, the respondents, they want a pool. That was their #1 facility. And swim lessons were their #1 program they voted for. PB Swims we conducted a survey and the #1 thing everybody wanted was an indoor swimming pool. And then just recently, this summer, Magellan Strategies worked for the school district and they polled the community and asked them, what would you consider voting for? As far as school renovations go or a new school, because the school district, they applied for the BEST grant to build a new intermediate school. And they did not get that BEST grant either time they applied. So they pretty much had to regroup and replan. And part of that planning was retaining Magellan Strategies. And when I was at the June 12th meeting, school board meeting, Magellan Strategies, they said, well, one of the most important points of this survey of results was this community wants a pool. So we know the school district has, right now they just have too much, they have too much going. They're trying to maintain their buildings, they're trying to educate the students. Last night, all those school board members stressed their first priority is educating those students. And they don't want a big disruption with renovations down at that school. And then the county, we know the county's busy. The county has a justice center, affordable housing, fire station 2, fire mitigation. The county's just so busy. PB Swims, we're trying to bring the citizens and taxpayers together, and we'd like you all to put it on the ballot just to see, do the taxpayers want to raise taxes? The beauty of the sales tax is visitors would be helping us pay to maintain, operate, renovate, and eventually replace our aquatic center. Just trying to think if I covered the background, what we're asking for. We do have a capital project budget as well as a operating budget draft. And do you all have any questions?
The first one I have is ballot question says the city of Leadville should increase taxes. The city of Leadville does not collect sales tax.
No, so you don't collect sales taxes, but can you put this on the ballot? According to the statutes, I saw that you could, so would you be raising the taxes collected at this, at city stores?
Collects all the taxes.
Okay. Is there a way that we could reword that?
Well, that would be a question for lawyer.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we can take questions and then, I've had our city attorney take a look at this and she has some observations and questions as well. And I think we'll hit that when we get to her. So, whenever is appropriate.
So would you like to just proceed with some of our questions and comments, and then I would really like to hear from Evan. About this, and I also I want to acknowledge that there's public in the room and online who probably want to make comments as well. So I guess what I'm gonna propose that we do is ask our own questions, hear from Evan, and hear from the public. Is that all right? Okay.
I will say, in addition to a sales tax implementation in the city. One of the things that would be difficult for a school district to vote on increasing the mill levy is if they put that funding towards. The pool, they cannot put that funding towards education, increasing teachers' wages, classroom sizes, et cetera, et cetera. So it would really put them in a really difficult situation, where they would have to then go by whatever legal procedure they would have to go through to change that mill levy and where that money goes to. So it would really put them in a bind, whereas it doesn't really put us in a bind because I don't see that changing. If anything, we add on top of it, not necessarily change it. It's common for different states, that is, there be sales taxes to do things like this. Our neighbors at Summit through the county admittedly have their own tax for similar projects, well-being community, that is. So, I mean, we're not out of the blue, but I would also like to hear what, legally speaking, the differences between that, which is obviously county operated and city, and what that could pose for us.
One of my questions is what would happen to the funding from this tax increase in the event that your capital campaign was not successful?
So. That's a great question, but we have to do this. Our capital campaign. We have to get the money to fix this. That's not, I mean, our capital campaign is gonna be successful. So I'm not going anywhere. Back then, I met Councilmember Hill at the pool years ago. I'm not going anywhere. And our PB Swims. One of the reasons, so we have $28,000 of community support that's saved just for this renovation. Now, the school district's numbers are, it's a $10 million renovation to renovate the whole thing. It's pretty much a $3 million renovation to replace that pool, upgrade ADA, and upgrade HVAC so it's safe to go into again. So one of the reasons we haven't been able to get, we've applied for about 8 or 9 grants. And the funders say to us, you have no institutional support. Because a year ago, the county was saying, hey, it's not our building. And the school district was saying, hey, it's the county's responsibility. So PB Swims, we were saying, well, it's not the school's problem, it's not the county's problem. It's our responsibility and our opportunity. We're raising a generation of children who will not learn how to swim to save their lives. It's a bunch of boomers like myself that just want to get in the water because everything else hurts. But. You know, we're here because there are kids whose parents get the 6:15 morning bus, leave the county, work all day. Come home, their kids go to school here, they do not have the transportation, the time, the money. To get their kids swim lessons out of county. It's our moral obligation, so. I haven't even considered that we're not gonna be successful. It may take us 20 years, but, this visionary rec center. It's been a vision for many years. It's in the 1998 comprehensive master plan. It's been on recreation advisory board work plans. And when the pool was permanently closed by the commissioners, they said, we'll take heart, we're gonna do a master plan. So we have this $100,000 pros master plan, and it pretty much says, start thinking about building a rec center, and that's 10 to 15 years off at best. And we have what that pool needs in the $60,000 taxpayer funded Lake County Aquatic Center audit. So the prices have increased, code is probably increased, but it needs the same thing that it needed back in 2020. So this is pretty much a last ditch effort to get something on the ballot this fall. You may or may not know, PB Swims, the commissioners were good enough to meet with us at 2 work sessions. And their concerns were that we're rushing into this. Another concern is they wanted something more than the pool. They wanted a bigger scope, not just the pool. Other forms of recreation, trails, playgrounds. They're doing a feasibility study to see what's needed. Well, I know from swimming in that pool since 1975, it needs a dedicated source of funding. The county, you know, the county has a really good recreation department and has a lot of great programs. But despite my taxes increasing about 17% from 2018 to 2022, there wasn't a dedicated tax to that pool to keep that pool open. So we just learned the hard way twice, back in 1999 and back in 2021, we need something dedicated to the pool.
Well, I'm optimistic that you'll be successful in your capital campaign as you are, especially if this tax increases passed, because then you can show potential donors that there is a long-term plan to move forward. But I think I would like to see the city have an out for the use of those dollars in the unlikely event the capital campaign does stand.
Other comments or questions?
Alex and Tabors don't usually mix, so.
I have some thoughts, but I actually would like to hear from Evan King first, our attorney.
Right. Hi, everyone. So I guess my first thing would be I have to agree with the county here. I do think this is incredibly rushed, and I'm very concerned with how narrow scope this is. For why it's rushed. Yes, we can still technically pass the deadline of September 8th, but another thing to consider is if you put something on the ballot tonight, the FCPA will kick in. So the Fair Campaign Practices Act kicks in. That will severely limit your ability as council members, as council, to actually advocate for this. So I would be concerned that people are going to see this on the ballot and have absolutely no idea what it's for. I mean, you know, on the first glance, it looks like you guys are paying for a county pool. I know that's not the case because it isn't in your jurisdiction, but you're not going to have as much ability to campaign for this. So usually how this works is we advise clients to start thinking about Tabor questions in like April or May, so that the city can then have some town hall meetings, kind of garner interest, kind of like advocate for this tax before we actually put it on the ballot. So that's why I kind of think it's rushed, is you're not going to be able to do that with this. Another consideration is, you know, if you look at historically, if you put a tax measure on there and it fails, you're going to have a much harder time of passing another tax measure later on, especially if it's related to a similar topic. So, you know, it's one thing to say that it's, oh, let's just see what the voters think, but I don't want you guys to hurt yourself in future elections if this fails. So what I would propose is this is a great thing for next year. The narrow scope I have is exactly what's been raised. Like, what if the pool closes and we've pigeonholed this tax to just the pool? So, you know, I've spoken to attorneys in my office, and like a recreation tax is probably more appropriate here, where you in that, you know, ballot language can say that it's for the pool, you know, including but not limited to the pool. So, you know, some of that tax can go to the pool still, but you guys also just bought a community center. So maybe you'd want some of that money to also go to the community center, say if the pool can't raise the revenue. So there are options. I would just recommend maybe waiting for next year, doing this right, doing some town halls, and getting this passed correctly. I want you guys to get this done the first time and not have to come back and fight the losing battle if you had a failed tax measure. For the actual questions, if you guys don't want to take my advice and you want to go forward on something, I don't think how the question is written right now is up to Tabor standards or is appropriate. One thing that I agree with is you guys don't have a 4% sales tax. That's a 4% county sales tax that is then given to the city. So it's inaccurate to say that our new tax rate is going to be 4.25. Your new rate is 0.25. So that's one thing to consider. I also would absolutely not have that IGA language in there that requires you to pass an intergovernmental agreement with another entity. I mean, we haven't even talked to the school district about this. We don't know if they even want to do it. It sounds like they're basically saying they don't even want to operate this or take care of it, or the county doesn't. So if they stonewall us and say no, what happens to our tax? I don't know. Does it become invalid? Maybe. So absolutely strike that language from there. So overall, what I'm saying is I think this is a good idea, but let's turn it into a recreation tax next year. That we can include for the pool, like have language that will be for the pool. You guys could do a 1% or something higher. But if we push it off to next year, we can talk to some experts, see the best way to get this done right. Do some town halls, get people interested, find out what people actually want this tax to be used for. So I can answer any questions, but that's overall my impression of this, is it's too rushed and too narrow right now.
It's good to hear that there is a potential out while including the pool still in it. I think that's really important to note. And also that this ballot language would have to change to meet Tabor standards, which is kind of expected, to be honest, given the complexity of Tabor. That said, I can be completely honest, I'm not sure that I agree that it wouldn't pass. I think PV Swims have done a tremendous job in doing the outreach already to kind of get this campaign rolling. Not the city though, so that is the outlying factor. We haven't been able to see that impact ourselves.
Thank you, Evan, for that input. You summarized at least some of my concerns, and I want to couch this in the understanding that I am entirely for, like, I would like a pool tomorrow. But I want it to actually happen. And at least in terms of the way, I mean, there are some errors in this ballot language, and I entirely agree about the intergovernmental agreement. It can't be part of it. But I think my bigger concern is that even though I agree with Tim's point last time, like, I don't see a problem with seeing what the voters want. But if the voters want this, we better have our ducks in a row to deliver.
Yeah.
And the way that the language particularly is now, and what we haven't talked about, is if we did proceed and got passed a tax increase, like where I was saying at the last meeting, like, what are the specifics of how would we manage that, and where would that money go, and what if, you know, it's a little disappointing to hear that the school has some will be about adding the, repair or replacement of the pool to the language that they're considering. But if they're no longer in the game, potentially, then even if this passed, it would be years and years and years before with this money where you could even fix or replace the pool, much less operate it, manage it, and whatnot. So I just have some concerns about the specifics and what responsibilities would fall upon the city. I mean, we can collect steps, but then what? How do we administer it justly and appropriately, and honor the tax dollars that
I think Tracy pointed out too, that we did start collecting 0.25%. Do we need an idea with the state?
Right, because we don't receive any money directly.
Right.
And I mean, I think the point was we sort of learned that lesson with the accommodations tax. I think it passed and everybody went, oh, that's amazing. And then moved on, and there was no infrastructure in place to handle that. And city staff was already at capacity, and we added that to city staff's plate without any consideration of how those tasks would get done.
And the accommodations tax, just echoing something that Evan said, also had language in it that while it was very clear, the focus was going to be sending money to, to housing projects, there was some flexibility built in, kind of just in case, or related issues. So that didn't get us into the really narrow scope. And it would have an outlet valve, I think, I don't know who used that term.
I think one thing to keep in mind is it's August 15th, and the ballot language has to be certified by the 8th, which means that it actually has to be certified by the county clerk. That's our IGA that we just passed. So that means that someone, and city staff does not have the bandwidth to do this, because you are looking at city staff right now, pretty much at this table, to come up with appropriate ballot language in almost 2 weeks.
Yeah, so I don't think the city has the capability of taking over the ballot language or doing much advising on it. And I'm very nervous about ballot language that ends up, if we run into that problem, like these unanswered questions of like, okay, what account does this go into? And then what if we don't have a pool in a year, what does that mean for the city? Like, we're not gonna have a pool in a year, but it's attending. So I'm pretty uncomfortable with the way that it is right now, even though I entirely support the idea.
Yeah, it would be tough to come up with the right language at this point in the game. I'm totally for it, but I think it needs to be a more calculated approach. And a better ballot question needs to be formulated. And like the lawyer said, pass the town hall, build up to the election, and have a better chance of passing something.
Here's a question regarding, and maybe Evan, you can answer this, but if the decision was made to work towards next year is not a municipal election year, because it's an even year. So
You can call a special election for this if you wanted to. So that's still a possibility, or if you want to keep your municipal schedule, we'd be 2 years out, but you could do a special election for this. So it's not to say that you guys can't do something next year.
Cool, thank you.
So, Skirt, the special election for the council to refer to the ballot, but as far as the petition goes, could they call a special election, or does it have to be general election?
So as, well, I'm gonna let Evan.
Did you hear that?
I did. That's a good question. I don't know usually how it works for initiatives and how they follow it. It's gonna be in Article 11 of Title 31 with that information. I don't know offhand. Whether you can call a special election, so I would have to get back to council on that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Thank you.
So one possibility, actually, Lori and I just looked at that, there is like a citizens initiative. The deadline's in early August, so that's already passed, but that's a potential also, where you don't even have to.
Well, so Elaine and
Not that
I
I
have been talking
wouldn't-
to lawyers
I wouldn't
since
say that,
April,
but.
because we were gonna do a petition.
Uh-huh.
And then we found out we didn't have the statutory right for this election
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
up. So, but we might next year, so. Thank you very much.
I would really like to hear, because I know public came and would like to have some comments, and we'd really like to hear from the public on this. So I'm gonna ask if anybody in the physical audience would like to come and make a comment. Please do try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Keep it to,
Is there anybody else?
I think, Doug Beadler and,
I'll wait till you what you're saying.
okay, thank you.
Lisa Downey. I respect what your lawyer has said, but she doesn't know our community like we all know the community. Jane has been working tirelessly on this, and everybody through the surveys and everything. We know that this would pass, and we don't need a 2-year campaign to make it pass, because everyone knows what's going on. And I just would like to see it on the ballot so that we can say when we apply for grants, this passed at the city. And my understanding is it's not going to be operated by the city. It's not going to be operated by the county. It's going to be operated by PB Swims. And the money that would be generated for this 0.25% is going to be for operation. So I would beg that you put it on the ballot so you can see how the public feels. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Jeff Beadler, County Commissioner, speaking for the county. Really, most of what I was planning on saying, you guys already raised and had in great discussion with your lawyer. Maybe just touch on a couple things. I mean, I do think it would be great to try to keep having discussions with EDC, who is present for the school board meeting, with the school district, with us, with PB Swims, and try to come up with a plan. I mean, there's only so many pathways we can get a pool built. I mean, it's got to go into a renovated existing aquatic center at the school district. It's got to be a new build somewhere built by someone on land someone owns. Or it could go into building you built. You can stick a new pool in the LCIS building, presumably you can stick it anywhere. I don't know, but there's been no plan on that. But my point is like there's a couple different pathways. None of them are easy or cheap. And I just think we need to all be on the same page about the initial construction costs, that who's doing that, and then the operation costs. And as it was said, I mean, the county just felt like popping in with the operation costs. You don't know if you built the thing, just seems a little cart for the horse. And I appreciate the point about it, some community showing, but again, if I was a grant maker, you had operating costs, construction costs, no actual pool, I would be a little leery of that project. I did just want to, add, and really one of the things is so many of our points we wanted to make were covered in the great comments from you all and your lawyer. But I do think we need to be realistic about the renovation and new construction costs. The school district has done really deep work on this. That is why they were considering or have been considering, may still consider putting 10 million
for renovating the current footprint in the LCIS building. And with all respect, it's not 3 million, it's just not. 3 million might fix the actual literal rule, but everything is broken in there. The discussion last night at school district is, you are going into the walls of that building with a digger. Everything is going in that building for a 25-year renovation. For a new standalone pool and rec center, in their presentations, it's 25 million minimum. So these are big numbers, it's not 3 million. So I just want to close with that. And again, I really appreciate the discussion from you and staff and your lawyer. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Steve.
Three there. Name and seat president. There's many things I'd like to say about this, and in 3 minutes I can't. So what I would like to say is focus on funding. Gentrification in our town community has been exceptionally driven by the realtor dominated political scene here. And this is causing all kinds of problems for everybody. Vermont has a thing on their constitution about protecting habitat, as I understand, and local municipalities can create their own ordinances based on this to draw income from quick property flipping. For example, the pretend ordinance would be, you want to buy a property here and flip it in after 2 years, great, but they will charge 45% of your net. That kind of funding could be going to some of these social issues that we need. That would take a move to get a constitutional amendment on our constitution to limit this property flipping, or at least profit from it. And another thing is the realtor income. It's ballooned out, from my understanding, way beyond what someone be getting $70,000 to be a housing director. Somehow that needs to be legislated, that it could be taxed more heavily. I'm not sure, am I at 2 minutes or 3 minutes now? I'm at 2, okay. All right, so the main thing is, besides a realtor taxing them differently, which would take probably some kind of constitutional amendment, it would be an amendment that would give municipalities the ability to limit or to profit from this rampant property flipping, which is going to keep going on in Colorado. And that way, some of these social needs that we have could be funded by that, instead of always seeking grants or taxing the people further that are at the bottom line of the financial thing. And I think Evan King's haste makes waste argument is fairly strong, although I wish it wasn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anyone online that would like to enter a public comment on this issue? Please raise your hand. Sarah Lodge.
Good evening, everybody. Really appreciate the conversation that I just heard. I agree with Commissioner Fiedler. I think a lot of the points were made, and I'm glad that they were brought up. I think there's a lot of logic and concern, and it sounds like some priority setting being contemplated in the conversation regarding the request. I think Pro Tem Green's comment about what voters want and what and being prepared to supply that, just kind of further emphasizes the county's position in a number of things and the work that we've done over the last few years to be prepared and create that depth in county staffing and capacity so that we can meet the promises that we make, because what the voters want and what any jurisdiction is prepared to do can be miles apart from each other. So I do appreciate that conversation. And I also think that it's, there are more conversations to be had between the city and the county. And I do really wonder, not having been able to listen in on your past conversations over your large purchases, I wonder if the conversation was similar, because I don't know that the city has the capacity to operate some of those capital acquisitions. You all have heard tonight is add more capacity for projects, and as the only city resident, as a commissioner, I want to impress my desire as a city resident for my city to really invest in its people and create a foundation to operate from. I think there's a lot of other opportunity to get involved and be supportive in existing services to the community that can be really exciting without kind of chasing after every new idea. But really appreciate the conversation around this and look forward to exploring the opportunities with our partners over the next year. Thanks.
Thank you. Sarah, is anyone else online?
I don't know how to, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know how to do the hand raising thing. I
Okay.
apologize. And I'm out 36 and we don't get great internet, so I can't get video, but I can see all of you. I just posted a bunch of comments and I would just ask you to please look at them as you go through it. And I was just correcting some things that I heard some people say. It sounds like you're all in agreement on doing this.
I'm gonna interrupt. Could you introduce yourself to?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Diane Smith. My husband and I live down County Road 36, the Boulevard. We were active users of the pool. We've been here 16 years, and I've known Jane for a long time. And I am not a Colorado attorney. I'm a retired attorney, and so I am able to interpret some of the things. And I also have consulted a Colorado attorney on a number of these issues. In fact, called him during your meeting to clarify some things that your attorney said. I think what we're going to do, if it's helpful, is that he's going to be in touch with her, because it does qualify. It is Tabor. I mean, the language is consistent with Tabor. The city does have a tax. It's just that under Colorado statute, the county collects it. Leadville's not alone in that in terms of the kind of entity it is. And yeah, I would really like you not to put this off. And my experience is, longer you keep kicking this stuff around. I mean, it's not like the pool closed yesterday and we're rushing into this. The pool closed, it's gonna be 3 years soon. So saying this is too fast, I don't quite understand. But anyway, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Diane. Are there any other comments coming from online? Okay. Any other discussion? I think we should offer some advice for moving forward.
Yes, I have some. In the sake of not dropping this ball, as I do think it is vitally important, though I acknowledge that recreation period is vitally important in our community, I would love for us not to drop it and continue having it. But it's just clear to me that we do not have the capacity to internally run this and know what that looks like in a safe way without overwhelming our employees. I think one thing that I hope all of you agree with is last thing we want to do is put our employees in a situation where they're intensely overwhelmed again and potentially face burnout and turnover. We're already in not the best area with turnover, and given that we only have 2 employees who already have a full pallet and a full election to run, I'm also a little wary about that and putting that on top of them. So I would love for this to continue into next year, even if it means running a special election where we are more understanding of where this money can live. And it being some type of out, so it's not necessarily just the pool, and maybe that means increasing the number. But so it's not necessarily just the pool, but it has some area to go in the occasion that there is no grant money that we can access towards it. Unless county has some other ideas, we're going to have to get grant money for a rec center, for a pool, or anything we're doing, because quite honestly, even if it's 25 million, which I feel like is a little bit under probably than what it realistically would be by the time it's constructed, given our other projects. It's going to be a heavy number for us to lift, and I can't imagine that the city and county combined could lift that alone. So we're going to have to do some intensive research as to grant money where we can get that funding. And I would love for that to be inclusive of a pool with a straight path that includes a pool, but not limited to a pool, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Christian. Any other? I would have to say, I am in favor of taking a breath. I am entirely in favor of putting something before the voters. But, and I understand that the city would not be operating this, but we would be collecting and managing the money. And that kind of pathway and that kind of understanding of how that would work within the city has yet to be defined. I still feel, and I agree with Commissioner Fiedler on this, that I feel that we can collect this much money in 4 years, in 6 years, and we're not gonna have anything to show for it of the people who voted to increase their taxes so they could have a pool. So I feel that we almost need to either run something at the same time for construction or, dramatic renovation along with the operation. But my fear is that people are, of course, they're gonna vote for a pool. I think we have that community that will do that. But with this particular plan, if it's standing alone, we're not gonna see a pool in the foreseeable future. And either that needs to be communicated and discussed with the community, or we need a solid sign that construction or rehabilitation is also happening through some other source. Because I personally don't think that the community would put up with just this growing fund that wouldn't do anything in the foreseeable future. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a very still leery of ballot language that talks about us as a city with a multiple fiscal year financial obligation, without a clear idea of what we're doing with that obligation.
I had a really astute thought. Give me a second to recall it. No, it's okay. I came here this evening gung ho. This makes sense. But I do agree, as other members of city council have voiced, that stepping back and making sure that we are being prudent with our request to give you the full benefit, as well as potentially other recreational community center type things. to be in partnership. So I think, I agree with all of that. I have a question and I didn't understand it, but I don't think I really have to understand it right now. The fair campaign language that was spoken by the lawyer, I don't know what that means. And I, as a city councilor, I feel like I, at some point, need to understand what that means.
We ran into that with the accommodation tax where we knew once we were gonna submit the ballot language, like, we couldn't be like having town halls anymore. Like, we just really had to be like, huh, and wait. And so those public conversations and these points of like, here's what we would do with this, and here's how it was, here's how it's gonna put the.
Okay. I think the gist of it is that once we put it on the ballot, we as the city can no longer advocate for it.
Okay.
So that Evan can correct me, but is essentially what she's advising is, look, you're gonna wanna advocate for this. So what you need to do is you need to have lead time that you can advocate for it before you need to put it on the ballot. And what she's saying right now is, you know, we have 2 weeks, so you can't even really go, once we've started the ballot language is concerned, you can't really even do much as far as convincing the public that what you've just decided to put on the ballot is a good idea. So that's the point of the town halls in advance, is you can say, this is what we're considering. You know, this is the language, this is what it would go for, you know, and that can happen months in advance.
Thank you. One other thought, you mentioned that you can't apply for grants or have not been successful in that because there's not institutional support. Where we are saying we support this, we just want to make it right. And so perhaps keeping track of that and showing that would be helpful, even going into the next season, for us to add this to our to have a special election.
Well, and a letter of support would be greatly appreciated as well. And I thank you all. I know you have such a full night, so thank you so much for putting PB Swims on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think my husband just called to see if I was dead.
Our last action item is a motion to approve the Energy Mineral Impact Assistance Fund grant for the Tabor Outdoor Preservation Foundation. The staff like, oh, Sarah is there. Did you hear from Sarah?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you, Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. This is really, hopefully you read the staff report. It is required by the DOLA grant application process to have an official motion by the submitting entity, which is the City of Leadville, to approve the application that we submitted on August 1st. So things are a little out of order, but we were told that that was okay, that we could wait and get official board approval. So we did work on a robust grant application, which you have in your packet, which we submitted to continue our rehabilitation and project of the Tabor Opera House in 2024 and 2025. It's definitely a big, ambitious goal to raise $2.6 million to continue these efforts to finalize the exterior rehabilitation of the Tabor Opera House. And I'm asking and seeking for board approval, city council approval, officially on the application that we submitted August 1st. And I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Questions? Comments? This is not the exact, it's the same grant cycle when we talked about the community center, but if we apply for the community center version, it would not be the same pool of grant money that this would be coming from, so we would not be competing, we wouldn't be competing with ourselves in the end. Is my understanding correct?
Right, there's cycles.
Yep.
So this is a different cycle. There's cycles in August, December, and April, I believe. And so they're different application pools. Did you get my? Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think it sounds great. If there's no other discussion, I would entertain a motion.
This is for the Leadville Grants Commission, the Department of Local Affairs for the August 2023 EIAF grant round.
Mama seconds.
All in favor?
Alright.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it's very exciting. Go for
Great.
it.
Yes. We'll keep you posted. We've already gotten several grants approved for this bucket of project scope, and we are really excited. And I'll just say we have a really fun comedian coming to the Tabor Opera House on Saturday, August 26th. So we hope to see you there. And we've distributed some free vouchers to all of our first responders. So we hope to see a lot of good turnout for that. And thank you for your time and have a great evening.
Great, thank you, Sarah.
Mhm.
Okay, remarkably, we have nearly reached the end of our meeting. I will take or entertain public comments from people in the room. Any final public comments from people online? All right.
Can I
Council
say one
reports.
other thing?
Yes, of course.
I'm sorry, I just picked up the phone and called the attorney that's representing PB Swims. And it is not true that you guys can't advocate once an issue's on the ballot. You are elected officials. You can talk to anybody you want to. It doesn't follow the Colorado law. And I think we'll better get the attorneys together because I, in my opinion, think you're getting bad advice with all due respect to your attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
And I'm happy to send out an FCPA memo that clearly explains what you can and cannot do. We have some ones on file.
I think that would be very helpful. Thank you, Evan. Council reports.
Sure. I'll do a quick one. Thanks you guys for, there's lots of exciting things happening at the regional housing authority level and at the county level in terms of housing. One thing, and this will be something that I also asked the regional housing authority is in the future, I would love if we are more direct about working with partners that are already established in doing work such as rental assistance and weatherization programs, C4, full disclosure, I'm employed with C4 now. I would love for us to be way more direct in our work with them in terms of any potential future projects that we may have and looking at any potential future projects that we may, or buildings that we may acquire on behalf of the city. Obviously, the community center is a whole different ballpark because we were forced to move fast on it, but it would feel most appropriate to kind of start establishing that professional relationship with our nonprofits and other community groups and members so that it is way more collaborative and we aren't doing more work than we have to. Perfect example of this is if the Regional Housing Authority, which is a discussion that we've had, implements a repair fund. So basically we would de-restrict a building that we pay the repairs for. A perfect place that could go through is C4 because we already do weatherization programs. So they can help administer through a lot of that. And having those discussions of that type of collaborative work so that the work can be done and we aren't paying someone to do a job that could be done by someone else already makes a lot of sense to me. And this is probably going to be more applicable in the future once we get started with more programs than it is now. There isn't much now that we could fully collaborate in, though I think it's worth starting those meetings. So I don't know if that means once you have more capacity meeting with some more people, maybe not this year, but in upcoming years, or if it means like hoping that the mayor can do that. But just wanted to raise that as it seems like it could help all of us out with future planning.
Any other council reports? I imagine next meeting, we will get an earful of mayor's report and how incredibly cool Ireland is. Public meeting planner. So we're all aware about our joint session coming up on the 29th. But I think for us, other than that, that's it, the rest of the month.
Fair Housing Fair is October 23rd.
Fair housing fair,
Yes,
October 23rd.
or sorry, 13th, not 23rd. It's October 13th from 4 to 7.
That was so much fun last time.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Great. And that is being hosted by the Housing Coalition.
All right. Any other reminders, additions? All right, and I adjourn this council meeting. Thank you so much for excellent work, your patience and